Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So I wanted to start the show talking about kind of the world of sports talk radio, but I almost feel like it's become more than sports talk radio, if that makes any sense. Right? Like, we're on the radio and most of the people listen on the radio. And I know that people listen on the radio more than they do the other things because everybody who's got a digital show would love to have a radio show. Like, maybe Joe Rogan is fine doing it his way, but most people, most of the podcast bros, they want to be on the radio. They're not on the radio, so they, invent their own radio show, which is fine. But I say that because I would say in the world of sports talk radio, but instead I'm going to say in the world of sports takes, in sports takery, everybody has to have the answer today. And everybody who is giving you content will claim that they have the answer today. I'm sure people don't think of the Jared Stillman program and think to themselves, Jared is really good at admitting when he doesn't know something. But the truth is, because I've spent a lot of time, my best friend is a doctor, and I remember during COVID asking, so how much longer is this going to go on? And he'd say, we don't know. We've never dealt with this before, so we don't know what's going to happen next. And finally, I realized it was a lot like the old man when I'd say, is Mariota going to be a franchise quarterback? I'd say, I don't know. And I'd be sitting here, again, in that sports take mindset, saying, give the GM, you've got to know. You've got, yes, no, yeah, you got to give me. But that's not how it works. So Cam Ward, yesterday, while accepting a college championship trophy, I don't know the Davey O'Brien Award, good for him. While accepting the Davey O'Brien Award, Cam Ward told the Associated Press when asked about the fact that Cam Ward took himself out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl at halftime, said, okay, this is a quote, okay, you're either going to draft me or you're not. If you don't draft me, that's your fault. And you've got to remember you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that. Boy, that puts the Titans on notice, doesn't it? If the Titans don't draft Cam Ward will make them pay, according to Cam Ward. And the Titans are the only team in the entire NFL who has the choice of drafting Cam Ward right now. If Cam Ward is not a Tennessee Titan, they will have passed on taking Cam Ward. If they trade the pick because somebody offers them 10 number one draft choices, they will have passed on Cam Ward. If they draft Abdul Carter because they've got a higher grade on Abdul Carter, they will have passed on Cam Ward. The Titans are the only team that for sure can pass on Cam Ward. And once again, Cam Ward said, you've got to remember you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that. So how do we take it? Because some people look at that quote on its own and they will say, hey, look at that confidence in the young man. Look at that. He's going to show you. Do you want to be the general manager? Do you want to be the coach? Do you want to be the owner that passes on Cam Ward so that he can shove it up your tush? Probably not. Some people, though, will look at it as arrogance. Cam Ward hasn't played a drop in the NFL. And he's going to sit here and tell owners, I'll make you pay. Yeah, Johnny Manziel texted the owner of the Browns and said, let's wreck the league. And he said, yeah. How's that working out for you? I mean, Dak Prescott said last week the Cowboys are close to the Eagles. Doesn't necessarily make it true. So when it comes to Cam Ward and what he said, the truth is, in order to know whether or not it's the sign of a very confident quarterback with a chip on his shoulder who is going to be on a mission or whether or not it's the arrogance of somebody who thinks this is going to be easy in the NFL because it was easy in the first half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Couldn't beat Syracuse, couldn't beat Georgia Tech, but it was easy in the ACC. Well, this is the AFC. This isn't the ACC. In order to know what that really means, you actually have to know Cam Ward. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't know Cam Ward. So I can't look at those comments and think to myself, oh my God, Cam Ward is going to have a rocket up his butt and he's going to shove it into the Titans if they do not draft him with the number 1 pick. We must draft him with the number 1 pick. I can't go there. Because again, I don't know Cam Ward. You know, the story is that Tom Brady, the 199th pick in the draft, met Robert Kraft. This is the first time that he ever met Robert Kraft in the parking lot after being drafted. And the way Kraft tells the story is Brady said picking him was the best decision you've ever made. Bill Polian said Peyton Manning told him on his 30 visit, if you don't draft me, I'll kick your ass. Now, does that mean that Cam Ward is going to be Peyton Manning or Tom Brady? Probably not. But this is where the real work of scouting and the real work of drafting and the real work of risking your career on decisions that you make about other people all comes into play. What kind of person is Cam Ward? I've watched enough Cam Ward tape to get a feel. I think I watched like 5 games and I went to the Super Bowl and I talked to all the draft gurus and I told them what I saw and I didn't hear a single one of them say, no, Cam Ward's not this or no, Cam Ward's that. I know Cam Ward is talented. I know he can make some of these gorgeous off-platform throws. He's got good arm talent, good athleticism. Now, I don't think he's elite in any of those, arm talent, athleticism, etc. But he's got real talent. But Anthony Richardson has real talent too, and he checks himself out of games. Will Levis has real talent, but he seems to be more concerned with Mayo commercials and being cool on Instagram. And Kyler Murray has talent too, but he's too busy playing Call of Duty. And that's the hard part on all of us on the outside. We don't know the answer here on Cam Ward. We don't know what kind of guy he is. But no one's going to click a YouTube video that says, I don't know what kind of guy Cam Ward is. I don't know what kind of leader Cam Ward is. I don't know. All of those things that they'll sit down with him at the combine, the speed dating that is getting to know these guys when you don't have a clue what they're about on a day-to-day basis. This is what really decides whether or not that Peyton Manning, if you don't draft me, I'll kick your ass. That Tom Brady, I'm not giving the job back to Drew Bledsoe, is really confidence of a competitor who's got that Michael Jordan, I'll show you inside of him, or if it's just a bunch of talk. If it's arrogance that Cam Ward thinks this is going to be so easy. Because, again, it was so easy in the ACC. Except Georgia Tech, except Syracuse, except the help they got from the referees in the Virginia Tech game, which I thought was bullcrap. But, again, it's much easier to have a YouTube video saying, here's me breaking down the Cam Ward film, and here's why Cam Ward will be a star. It's easier to do that than it is to say, hey, man, I have no idea what this kid's about. I have no idea what his makeup is, what his psyche is. I have no idea how he's going to be as a leader. I have no idea how he's going to respond to criticism, how he's going to respond to expectations, how he's going to get other people to support it. I have no idea. I could not tell you. And there's nothing that I'm going to learn. Because I'm not going to sit down with Cam Ward for an hour, 5 hours, 6 hours, unless the Titans hire me out of nowhere, and I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not going to sit down, although they've made worse hires. I'm not going to sit down with Cam Ward and be able to tell you what this kid's all about. I'm not going to be able to do it. So when I hear those comments, again, there's some Brady in there. There's some Jordan in there. There's some Manning in there. But does he really have their mindsets? Again, I don't know. Neither do you, by the way. Neither does Mel Kiper, nor Daniel Jeremiah, nor any talking head you see on TV. And of the 32 teams, and let's take 15 out because they don't need to consider a quarterback at all, my guess is there are varied opinions about that exact topic amongst those 15. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in on the Cam Ward comments. What do you make of them? Again, saying, hey, if you pass on me, I'll remember it for the rest of my career. 615-737-1025. Now, the personality test, that is a big deal when it comes to deciding who can be a franchise quarterback and who's not a franchise quarterback. But there is one thing that I am really, really, really worried about when it comes to the personality test. And unfortunately, it's about somebody who I do know. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
Both players, I'll say this, let's just get this out of the way. Both players are absolute dogs. Competitive nature, their will to win, showing up in big moments, like toughness, taking hits, bouncing back. Like both players are equal in terms of some of the intangibles you look at. I have heard that Cam Ward's kind of legendary in terms of leadership, demanding from teammates. You're getting someone who's going to come in and kind of have that veteran approach already. And so while Shadour's great in that department, I think Cam's like weirdly high level.
That was Todd McShay on his show on The Ringer. Ian, we haven't heard much from Todd McShay over the years.
Miss old Todd.
I know. I always like Todd. So Todd McShay says that Cam Ward and Shadour Sanders are both absolute dogs. And that's dog in the good way. That they're both absolute dogs. Ward maybe more than Sanders as far as, again, being the leader is concerned or all those things that teams say they care about. Again, I have no way to know what's true and what's not. I will say this. I do have some serious concerns on Shadour Sanders. I mean, when Caroline told me and then sent me the picture that he signed his name, $EDEUR $SANDER, I was like, oh God. And then apparently last week, Ian, I did not know this. His rap video came out.
I heard a little bit of this.
He's got a song. He's got a video.
I think they played it on Robbie and Rex Shred some.
I mean, oh yeah. So does that scream all ball to you? Somebody who, again, cares about all ball?
There might be room for both.
Toddy Todd says, is there? When's Joe Burrow's rap album come out?
I don't know.
When's Brady's rap album come out?
Brady, that I'd like to see.
But again, Toddy Todd says that they both are just absolute warriors, absolute competitors, absolute. Ward a little more than Sanders. I love Todd McShay. I'm not basing my decision to draft the guy with the number 1 overall pick based off of what Todd McShay says. But here's what does worry me. That of the triumvirate of decision makers with the Titans, granted, Brian Callahan holds a lot less weight this year than he did this time last year. And I do believe this is Mike Borgonzi's call. But I do know Brian Callahan, and I do know Chad Brinker. And when it comes to picking these quarterbacks and doing the personality evaluations, they've missed in the past. Now, Borgonzi, we have no idea, and I have no idea what Mike Borgonzi is or isn't as far as being able to, what I really consider, weed out the bull crap. Weed out, again, when somebody's just pumping tires to pump tires, when somebody, and I think I'm pretty good at that. I have no idea with Borgonzi. I don't think Callahan can do it, and I'm not sure about Brinker. Because Brian Callahan, I mean, he can pretend that he didn't hype up Will Levis all last offseason, but he did. To the point that it was over the top. Remember the offseason of toxic positivity that we talked about? When Brian Callahan got the job, he said on this show, he said, yeah, all that stuff about the banana peel and the mayonnaise, that stuff's kind of goofy, but, it's clean slate with Will, and I'm excited to see. But then after an offseason, when he started doing interviews after the draft, he did podcast after interview in which it was pants off. Will Levis, he's the guy. Breer had a whole breakdown about how they watched film, and this incredible throw Levis made to Chig in the Falcons game was really a bad throw because it was a bad decision, and Levis recited it right there in front of Breer, everything he did wrong. Before the Chicago Bears game, Brian Callahan was asked about Levis, and he said he's built for this. Then Levis gave the game away to the Bears. The truth is, based off of what Brian Callahan said last year, throughout the offseason, he thought Will Levis was a dude from that personality and intellectual intellectual standpoint, only to have Will Levis be completely flummoxed 2 weeks into the season. I'm telling you, I think that, again, the way he even talks about it, Brian Callahan was completely blindsided by how irresponsible Will Levis was as a quarterback. And with Chad Brinker, I don't know what to make of everything he said in the past with things about how great Ran Carthon is or how great everything is going to be and how everybody's so aligned and they're pulling the rope in the same direction and their great analytics are going to separate all the things he did last year, which then lead me to, does he really have a clue? Because almost everything he said last year, the opposite happened. Everything he was pumping the fans up about, the opposite was what went down. Like, was he not in the room saying, yeah, I think we need a better quarterback than Mason Rudolph to back up Will Levis because who knows about Levis? Or was he's our guy? Or was he just lying the whole time? And I asked him in his deposition that he did with the local media, I said to Brinker, I go, you said you guys were so aligned, you were a part of it, and now why are you still here? Why are you promoted? And he said he had responsibility last year, but not authority. Without, again, going into what the responsibility was and what the authority was or was not, which, again, we still totally aren't sure about. So, when it comes to determining Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Will Howard, I mean, I use Will Howard as a great example here. I cannot erase from my memory banks what Will Howard did in the Ohio State playoff run, how bad it was, and how bad he was after that Michigan performance, and how good he was in the playoffs. So you need to evaluate these personalities, and you need somebody that can actually do it. And last year with Callahan, it proved to me with Levis that was a total 180 from everything that Brian Callahan thought he was going to be, that I'm not sure Brian Callahan really can decipher those things. And with Chad Brinker, again, either Chad Brinker can't decipher personalities or Chad Brinker lied the entire time when talking about personalities. Again, I don't know. But I think the last couple of years in the Ran Carthon era, there was a big concern about connectability. You know, we want to connect with the players. We want to connect with Cam Ward. I don't care about connecting with Cam Ward. I don't care about having a general manager who connects with Cam Ward's personality. I care about having a general manager who can evaluate Cam Ward's personality. And again, with Borgonzi, I have no idea if he can do it or if he can't. I have no clue. But I'm pretty sure Callahan can't. And with Brinker, again, either Brinker couldn't, and for some reason, Amy still loves him, or all that stuff last year about Ran and I were just so aligned. He's like a long-lost brother of mine. Was all bullcrap, which I kind of do lean more towards. That again, he was just, pumping the tires because that's what the owner wanted to hear. But it does worry me because, again, everybody's going to have an opinion. The way that this really works, and I believe that Mike Borgonzi is going to have the final say on this, even if technically that responsibility belongs to Chad Brinker. But everybody's going to have their own opinion. And it's the job of Mike Borgonzi or Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi or whomever. It's the job to decipher who can actually evaluate these guys' personalities. And unless the Titans, with all the additions they've made of Dave Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie, and unless they plan on adding Sally Jesse Raphael in there, they're going to have to do this on their own. And I worry about Callahan's evaluating because, boy, he loved Will Levis. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Again, I am very fascinated with the combine coming up about Cam Ward's personality. Like, again, I watched tape on Cam Ward, and I said after I watched tape that the meetings that I would have with him, the top 30 visit, the meeting at the combine, pro day, I'd work him out privately, all of those things, like just the interactions would be paramount as to whether or not I could consider Cam Ward with a top pick. I haven't really talked as much about Shedeur. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I'm going to just say this. If you take a young man, you would want him to have a father that's really invested in that young man's growth, development, and their career. That's what Deion has been for him. He's been his coach. He's been his mentor. He's been his father. And I can't point to one thing negative in terms of what he's done in one of those roles with Shedeur that you could say, I don't want that. I don't want that. So when you tell me show, to me, that sounds like a negative connotation that I can't point to anything
You don't
that
worry
points to being negative.
if you draft Shedeur, and we know the Titans' offensive line stinks.
Well, tell me exactly what you're referencing. Don't expect me to answer that for you because guess what? This year, that entire football team, the average grade point average for the entire team was 3.0, the highest ever in the history of the program. He took a team that won one game 2 years ago to a team that's playing in a bowl game. He's got two of the best players in this year's draft. You can't argue against any of these points that I'm making.
not arguing against that.
But then you throw me out of the show.
That was Solomon Wilcots getting on my ass at the Super Bowl. And again, my question for Solly was about Shedeur Sanders and about, hey, if you draft Shedeur, should we be worried about getting the Deion show in town? Which, by the way, the next day on Radio Row, and you know I love Solly, and Solly always gets on my ass every year at the Super Bowl. Solly was rocking Ian a Colorado Buffaloes windbreaker.
Love it.
So when I'm like, yeah, do you think Dion might be, I might have been barking up the wrong tree. But I was talking about Cam Ward. Again, Cam Ward made the comments yesterday along the lines of, if you pass on me, I'll make you pay. And do we look at that as supreme confidence? Again, the Jordan confidence, the Brady confidence, the Manning confidence, Manning telling Bill Polian, if you don't draft me, I'll kick your ass. Or do we look at that as the arrogance of Cam Ward just thinks, hey, this is going to be so easy? And again, when it comes to Ward, I see the talent. To me, and I know that like Matt Miller at ESPN won't put a first-round grade on Cam Ward, I do see a first-round quarterback in Cam Ward. That being said, I see like the 18th pick in Cam Ward. I don't see the first pick. So he'd have to wow me in the meetings about his leadership, about his just love of the game, about all of those things for me to consider him with the first overall pick. We haven't really talked as much about Shedeur Sanders. And while I do think there needs to be a lot of work done on the Shedeur Sanders front, I'm already kind of turned off. I brought this up earlier, but at the Super Bowl, Caroline had Shedeur Sanders on the Yahoo set, and all the stars that went over to the Yahoo set signed some truck that they had. And he signed his name $HEDEUR. I don't know why he didn't need another dollar sign. ANDER at dollar sign. Again, it was dollar sign, squiggly line, S, squiggly line, dollar sign. So when you sign your name with the money signs and you're dropping a music video 2 months before the draft, it does concern me that you're not all ball. The Dion factor is important to me because while on one hand, Deion Sanders may be the most supportive father in the history of fatherhood, that would be a great thing. He also might be a distraction to your football team. The on-field confrontations that Shedeur Sanders had, the Arizona State kid when he threw his mouthpiece into the stands, the Colorado State kid when he put his wrist in his face, Cam Newton. I mean, again, all of those things need to be investigated. Like, again, this is the job. You have to figure out whether or not Shedeur Sanders is emotionally mature enough to be your starting quarterback, to be your franchise quarterback, to be the guy that you are risking your career on. If you use the number one pick on Shedeur Sanders and he ends up spending too much time doing rap videos, the same way Will Levis spent too much time doing mayonnaise commercials, you're fired. I mean, half the town doesn't even believe Rand Carthon picked Will Levis, and he's never going to get another job. So all of this stuff, I think, is a big deal. And I think the reason a lot of people don't bring it up is because they don't want Dion coming after them. I'm not worried about Dion coming after me. If the Titans do somehow end up with Shedeur Sanders, and I don't think it's very likely that they will, but if the Titans do end up with Shedeur Sanders, I foresee Dion and I not being on the best of terms, which I'm okay with. Because, again, I'm going to call it like it is, and I hold people accountable. I'm also not afraid of being called racist. It's happened plenty of times. I know I'm not. But I guess when it comes to Cam Ward, like I am fascinated by how the meetings will go. I am fascinated. Again, they won't let us in the room, but I am fascinated to see or hear, if I could, if the Titans leak anything out there, which we'll see if they're a leaky team with Borgonzi running the show or not. Certainly, I haven't seen Diana Rossini running around as much as she was before when Vrabel was the coach, so we'll keep that in mind. But I do think that when it comes to Ward, I mean, I am very interested in how those meetings go. With Sanders, even though if I was considering him with the number one pick, it might be a little more. I guess I just don't think it's as paramount in discovering what Sanders is all about because I don't really think that Shedeur Sanders has the ability to be worthy of the number one pick. I do not believe that Shedeur Sanders has the ability, the talent to make you regret not picking him. I think Cam Ward does. Like, there is some special in Cam Ward's game. You know, off balance, off platform throws in the backfield, chucking the ball 50 yards down the field right into the hands of the receiver. There's really not as much special in Shedeur's game as much as there is just the ordinary, just doing what a grown-up quarterback should do. And again, if I'm using the number one pick, I think I need some superstar in you. So again, when Cam Ward, frustrated over people being upset that he pulled himself from the bowl game, says, if you don't take me, you'll regret it. I do think there's a chance that the Titans could live that down. I do think that I would take that threat seriously. I would investigate that threat seriously. But I just don't have the same fear with Shedeur Sanders. 615-737-1025 and our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. One texter into the text line says, Josh Rosen said that there were 9 mistakes ahead of him. Cam could be more Rosen than he is Manning and Brady. I do wonder, like we hear the story of Ty Law and Lawyer Malloy taking Tom Brady out to dinner after Tom Brady became the starting quarterback, or at least the starting quarterback while Drew Bledsoe was hurt. And apparently at the dinner, Brady told the two of them, like, I'm not giving the job back. And Ty Law and Lawyer Malloy looked at each other and laughed. Like, yeah, I mean, Drew Bledsoe's worth $100 million. This guy's a 6th round nobody out of Michigan. Good confidence there, Tommy. And obviously we know the rest is history. I did not know that about Josh Rosen. Added to the list. I mean, I barely even remember Josh Rosen, other than the fact that, man, Arizona pulled the plug on him quickly. Randy says he could be the next Peyton Manning or it could be the next Josh Rosen, who, once again, very clumsily stated the night he was drafted he would make all the teams that passed pay for it. I like confidence, but I hear his comments more of an overused mantra and an attempt to threaten teams into choosing him. He could be the next Peyton Manning. The big difference is Peyton Manning and Tom Brady made their comments directly to the owners or general managers. They didn't throw it out there in the public in order to put the attention on themselves. I actually think Cam Ward did this to get the attention off the fact that he pulled himself out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which was the sign of no competitor. Like, that was the sign of, I'm not a competitor. I mean, Rick Spielman, when he was still doing his podcast before he had gone to the Jets, I mean, Rick Spielman basically came out and said, I can't believe that he took himself out. And if I was a general manager interviewing him, I would be very, very worried about why he did that. Because it's like saying, hey, teammates, I'm here for me. I'm not here for the game. I'm not here to compete, etc. Now, again, I think we live in a different time, so I understand it, but I think he was trying to get the discussion off pulling himself out of the bowl game. That's why he did that, not to try to scare teams into drafting him. Basically to say, I'm such a competitor that even though I took myself out of the bowl game, I'm such a competitor that if you don't pick me, you will regret it. Will in Clarksville's mad about my Shedeur Sanders comments. Says, Jared, are you radio 24/7? Just because Shedeur does a song doesn't mean he's all football. It is the off season. Let him live his life. Do you hear that, Ian? It's the off season.
Yes, it is.
It's the off season. Let's let these guys do whatever they want to do because it's the off season. It's draft season for Shedeur Sanders. Draft season. That is a thing, right? If he shows up to the combine fat and out of shape, which I don't think he would, but if he did, would we not be concerned? But Jared, it's the off season. It's his draft season. And again, when does Mahomes' rap album come out? When does Josh Allen's rap album come out? If you want to be my starting quarterback, I'm going to use the number one pick. You better be all ball all the time. I don't mind you going and doing your thing, chasing women, baby mamas. I don't care about that. But when it's time for football, and football, like any other sport, it's a year-round thing. I need to know you're dedicated to football. You know, the reason the NBA players are having such a hard time understanding why everybody's so mad at the product that is the game is because the NBA players are raking in the cash. The NBA players are sitting back and seeing everybody get upset about it, and they don't understand. They're like, well, I mean, what are you guys upset about? I mean, we need to take load maintenance days off. We need to have you spend $100 to go to the game and then us not play. Don't you understand? And the reason that people are soured on the NBA is because the players don't care. They care about what basketball has given them. The money, the fame, the Instagram, the girlfriends, but when it comes to, you know, the teeth of the competition, they don't care about that anymore. They don't care. That's why that game is where it is. And I am not going to have a quarterback that's like that. At least not with the number one pick. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. More your phone, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Is the quarterback class as bad as everybody is making it out to be?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, obviously Ward down there, everybody's banging him because he played only a half in the bowl game. I actually give him a check mark. At least he played.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? At least he played, and he played well, and, tried to give his team his best effort. But, yeah, I don't think it's a really good class. I do like what I saw from Jackson Dart. I do think he's well coached by Lane Kiffin down there at Ole Miss. Just situational play, pro-style offense. Lane's been in the NFL, obviously, and has good ties. So I think he's very well coached, and I think he showed that down in Mobile. But, yeah, I think in order for Tennessee teams that are out there that need quarterbacks, is probably going to be through the free agent market. Last year we saw the quarterback carousel, musical chairs, where you're going to land. Hey, you look now, probably Kirk Cousins is available. Sam Darnold we know is available. Cooper Rush is an interesting guy. Backup for Dallas. He's won games. They seem infatuated with Trey Lance. I don't know why, but Cooper Rush wins games. But there's going to be a lot of movement in quarter. Then what's going to happen with Rodgers? What's going to happen with the other Jimmy Garoppolo? There's a lot of veterans who are going to be out there and be available that you probably would put ahead. I mean, Sanders, hey, I love Deion Sanders. His son's not ready to play pro football at quarterback. Let's be honest.
That was Jim Miller, former NFL quarterback from Sirius XM NFL Radio's Moving the Chains. By the way, Ian, I believe we had Jim Miller on at the Super Bowl, and about 5 hours later, Jim Miller was like the most controversial figure in the entire NFL because he put Lamar Jackson fourth on his MVP ballot.
Was that who did that?
That was Jim Miller.
Jim Miller. Wow. Okay.
Jim Miller had Allen 1, Saquon 2, I forget who was 3, and Lamar 4. Crazy. I know. But again, he says quarterbacks stink. Everybody says the quarterbacks stink for whatever that's worth. Glenn from Greenbrier says, I worry about Sanders being about himself and not about the team because when he scored a touchdown at Colorado, they played his song instead of the school's fight song. What? Ian, have you heard this?
I have not heard that. No.
I need some research done on that.
Okay.
They played his rap song, again, according to the texter. They played his rap song over the school's fight song? You got to be kidding me. Now, I actually might welcome it because I haven't listened to Shedeur Sanders rap, but it can't be as bad as when they play that old Johnny Cash song when the Titans score. But again, like this idea that you go to the team, you go to the marketing department and the
This
audio
says the
video
spokesperson
people.
for the school denied a claim that its coach wanted his son's song "Perfect Timing" to play over the team's fight song after the Buffalo scored a touchdown.
But it did in fact happen.
I don't know.
So we don't know if it happened, but the spokesperson said that Deion did not orchestrate that.
Correct. He did not instruct the school's band to forego the fight song to play Shedeur's song.
I need some proof. But if that's the case, that's bad. That is bad.
I guess it says when Shedeur Sanders scores, the band will wait a moment for a small snippet of Shedeur's song to play before immediately kicking into Glory, Glory, Colorado.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That is so, if I was Shedeur, I would be like, don't do that. Again, it gives off the vibe that he's not all ball all the time. That is a concern. One texter says, Sanders did what he did behind the worst line in college football 2 years in a row, and nobody is talking about that. You mean Sanders didn't beat anybody good? That's why we give him a pass for the fact that he never beat anybody good. This year, they played BYU and got crushed. They didn't play Arizona State this year. They didn't have to play Oregon this year or USC or Washington, those teams that had bolted to the Big Ten. Shedeur never beat anybody good, ever, when he was at Colorado. And we give him a pass for that because, to your point, his offensive line is terrible. One texter says, for me, it's not just about wanting a player that lives football. It's about Sanders has money on the line right now. If he can't focus for his own pocket, I doubt he would focus on the team. Doesn't Shedeur Sanders already have all the money? Like, wasn't that the thing? Like the NIL, his NIL payments are like greater than any player ever before him. And then, of course, it's not like Deion's hurting for cash. I mean, he's making a ton of money as the coach at Colorado. I'm sure Deion's made a ton of money in his life and everything else. I think, again, with Shedeur, I would need to be convinced that he's not an NBA player playing football. Again, I go back to the NBA. Did you see, Ian, did you see what Kevin Durant said on Twitter yesterday about all the people crapping on the All-Star game?
No, I don't think so.
So he basically sent out a tweet that said, everybody seems to have more fun criticizing the All-Star game than watching the game itself. Let's just cancel the weekend because we're all miserable anyway, so we don't want to go to it. And, I mean, he was getting crushed for it, and rightfully so. But here's the thing that's crazy about the NBA. There is a percentage of people that cover that league, and I would argue a majority of the people that play it, that do not understand the problem with basketball is that the players do not care about the games. That's why they don't play them all. That's why they're, load management. One of the best players just got traded because his team thinks he's too lazy and fat. Again, LeBron canceled on the All-Star game the morning of the game. Draymond Green, a noted problem, is up there complaining about the All-Star game when he used to play in it. He didn't do anything to make it competitive. They didn't have that problem with Kobe. They didn't have that problem with Jordan. Didn't have that problem with those guys because those guys cared about the game. Those guys were competitors first. And when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, is he a competitor first? Or is he I like playing football, but I'm really more about the rap videos and signing my name with the $sign in my nice car, my Maybach, and all. Like, that's what I am concerned about. And again, this is quarterback. And there's just a different, just a different element to that. One texter said Lamar Jackson never beat anybody good. That's not true. He crushed Florida State at home when they were very good. So I don't want to hear that. That year, I believe Florida State won the Orange Bowl, and they were the best team in the ACC, and Lamar absolutely annihilated them to the tune of like 56-6 or something ridiculous. 615-737-1025 here on our program if you want to weigh in at 615-737-1025. Coming up next, I have got to stand up out of my chair, and I have to applaud somebody. And I'm actually a little surprised at who it is that I am applauding. But I felt like a member of a congregation in church. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So yesterday on the program, I had some strong criticisms for ESPN. I mean, for crying out loud. After a very exciting and exhilarating 3-1 United States victory in the Four Nations face-off, which was broadcast on ABC, with the championship game coming up, America v. Canada on Thursday, which will be on ESPN, with a playoffs and Stanley Cup final, which will be carried largely by ESPN and ABC. All the talk yesterday was basketball, 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 football, basketball, football, and a little more basketball. Their top hockey analyst yesterday on their flagship morning show, Get Up, was Harry Douglas. That was their top hockey analyst yesterday. And I said, what are we doing? Where's Levy? Where's Ray Ferraro? Where's PK? Where's these? Where? Well, I think ESPN got the message, because when they started to Get Up this morning, guess who was sitting right there at the desk? One PK Subban. And the game of the night, according to ESPN this morning, was the Canada-Finland game yesterday. So they immediately started the program talking with hockey highlights with PK Subban. They had PK break down the USA and Canada. They had PK all throughout the hour. They had him in the second hour. He was on SportsCenter later in the day. I saw that they had one of the defensemen on. I forget which one, because I just saw it in the corner of my eye, from Team USA. Who's one of the no-name defensemen on the team, Ian?
No, was it Slavin, Faber?
No. Faber, that's it. Slavin's good. They had Brock Faber on the program on SportsCenter, and oh my God, they're putting hockey on. Now, I'm not somebody sitting here telling you that they had, that they heard the Stillman program yesterday and said, oh, Jared Stillman ripped our ass for not having hockey, so let's get hockey. My guess is I wasn't the only one. And I bet there were a lot of people that were unhappy about, do we have to talk about the NBA All-Star Game for the 9 millionth time? Do we have to talk about who the biggest threat to the Boston Celtics in the East is? Can we at least talk a little hockey? And they had PK on the set. But this morning, they were having a discussion, again, about the NBA All-Star Game and how terrible it was. And now there's this idea, because the Four Nations face-off has been such a success, that basketball may try to adopt something similar. I believe it was Giannis Antetokounmpo that had talked about a team featuring the best players from the world outside of the United States against the United States might be something in the offing, with Giannis and Wembanyama and Luka Doncic and all these other international players. It's like, why not? Let's do that instead of the All-Star Game. Let's put some pride in there. So with PK on the panel, and this is a very long cut, but I think PK Subban hit the freaking nail on the head. I got out of my chair, and I could not applaud PK more. Here was what PK Subban said when asked about, hey, could we change the All-Star Game up a little bit in basketball the way we're doing in hockey? Well, what do we make of that? This was PK Subban on ESPN this morning.
I got a question for the NBA players. What the hell are you playing for? What are you playing for? It's not about the money. You make all the money. What, you're injured? Well, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. Are you hurt or are you injured? There's a difference. In hockey, we play hurt. We play injured. That is the culture of the sport. It's always been that way. So you want to talk about the business, the CBA, fans get all of that. But what do fans resonate with? They resonate with what's real. You got to fight sometimes for your country. You got to compete. You got to go out there and leave it on the ice, because those people are paying the price of admission. So fans know whether our stars are on the ice or not, they're getting their money's worth. The NBA has that issue that they got to work on. You got to create a better culture for your players. It starts with the leaders. This issue, there was no issue when Jordan was around. There was no issue when Kobe was around. There's no issue when Sidney Crosby's around. There's no issue when Wayne Gretzky was around, because those are true leaders. They lead by example. Sidney Crosby, Hockey Canada, those players, both Canada and U.S., it was the players that did that for the Four Nations. It's not the league. The league set it up, but the players went out there and decided and said, you know what, boys? We're all in. When is the NBA going to do that? Because, I haven't sat down and watched the NBA consistently since Kobe. Since Kobe has died, I have not sat down and watched the NBA consistently. I love basketball. Love the players. I think LeBron's great. I think KD's great. Steph Curry, love watching them. But you got to be on the court. You got to be there. And when you're there, you got to go all in. The fans got to feel that they're getting their money's worth. And right now, there's a big difference between what the NHL's doing with those events and what the NBA is doing.
Bravo, PK! I could not have said that better myself. Bravo. I mean, I heard that this morning and I got up out of my chair and I was like, preach. Preach. You want to know what makes the Four Nations face-off so exciting? Because last night, I watched the first two periods of the USA-Sweden game, and then I turned it off and went to bed because it was like, yeah. It had, again, what I was calling yesterday, Week 17 vibes, where it's like, we already clinched the division, so we're not going to start the quarterback. We're going to play our backup quarterback, and we're going to take Terry McLaurin out because we don't want him to get hurt. And so that's kind of how I felt about the USA game yesterday, which I didn't necessarily love. But again, like what I loved about Saturday's game, the Four Nations face-off, what I thought made it so electric was how much the players care, how much Canada cares, how much the United States cares, how much the fans care. Those fans in the Bell Center, they care. The get-in price, we looked it up yesterday, the get-in price, and I haven't looked at it recently. Maybe it's gone up, maybe it's gone down, I don't know. But yesterday afternoon, after Canada had beaten Finland to clinch their spot in the final, the get-in price for the Four Nations Championship was $1,200. $1,200 to sit in the nosebleeds at TD Garden to watch Team USA play Canada in what is essentially an exhibition. Why? Because the players care. And I saw Charlie McAvoy got hurt, and so he's not going to be able to participate in the game Thursday, which is a bummer. But if I was a Predators fan and a Predator player got hurt, I'd hate it, but I'd accept it. Because again, this is for the pride of the U.S. versus Canada. Canada's mad at the U.S. because of what we've been saying politically. We're mad at Canada because they always kick our ass internationally. So this is a real, true rivalry. And again, they got all these NBA guys on there. They got all these former NBA players and stuff on ESPN. I don't know why ESPN is so obsessed with the NBA, because I don't think the people who watch ESPN are as obsessed with the NBA as the people that run ESPN and the people that are on ESPN. But they got all these guys, and they're all afraid to say it. They're all afraid to be in LeBron James' crosshairs. They're all afraid to be in KD's crosshairs. They're all afraid to be tweeted by one of these guys. The NBA players don't care. They don't care about the All-Star game, which is why they don't play hard in it. They don't care about the regular season games, which is why every year we get a story about some child who was given a Christmas present. The only Christmas present they received from Santa that year was tickets to see the Lakers play, only to have LeBron the day of say, yeah, my pinky nail is, I got a hangnail, so I'm going to have to take the game off. Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid cannot be bothered to play in the playoffs. Luka Doncic just got traded because his team thinks he's fat. The NBA players don't care. And I'm sure there are some players out there who do. But when Ja Morant is willing to get suspended for half a season because he can't stop posting gun videos online, you've got a problem. You've got a problem. And bravo for PK Subban, for somebody on that set at ESPN to finally have the freaking stones to say it. And at the same time, Bravo to ESPN. For whatever reason, I'm not asking ESPN to break down what the Minnesota Wild need to do at the trade deadline, because I don't care about that, and neither does anybody else across America. But I am just saying, can we talk a little hockey? Like, it's exciting. The fans are excited. The TV ratings are good. The NBA, there's the complaining about the Saturday night because nobody wants to compete in that thing. So it's a G leaguer who no one's ever heard of that keeps winning the dunk contest. And at the same time, we've got Team USA and Canada going at each other. So I got to say, bravo to PK Subban, who hit the nail on the head. And thank you, ESPN, for actually paying attention to something that people do care about, that more people could get excited about if you just mention it one time instead of the 18th straight segment on what Golden State and the Lakers need to do with the trade. Well, the trade deadline's passed. What Golden State and the Lakers need to do in order to keep LeBron happy. Thank you. 615-737-1025. If you got a thought on this, we'll get to your phones at 615-737-1025. And I got to say, PK Subban, very good. Very good on TV. 615-737-1025. Plus, speaking of the Four Nations, I wondered if somebody watched the game. Then I heard their analysis of the game. I'm not sure if they watched the game. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
But for Team USA, it was me, the physicality and how they controlled the neutral zone against Canada. Very difficult to do. You think about McKinnon, McDavid, Sidney Crosby. Those are tough players to contain. They did a masterful job against Team Canada managing the neutral zone. And if you control the middle of the ice, you control the game. They're going to have to do that. And for a young, inexperienced team, which they are, they look like a veteran team. And for me, they were the more physical team. The Kachuk brothers were running shop. They came into Montreal, 100 years of history there in hockey. 100 years of history. Canada has been the best country at hockey. They came in and said, no. Things are changing. There's something different in the air, and they showed out. You know, listen, when it's all said and done, if Canada does not win on Thursday, if they get outmanned and out-physicaled on Thursday night, there's going to be huge questions of why this team was made the way it was.
There you go. That was PK Subban this morning on TV. And again, bravo to ESPN for finally getting to the hockey game that they had on Saturday and the hockey game that they will have on Thursday when there are no other really interesting sports. I mean, I guess college basketball, like now we're in the bubble watch period, so at least there's that. But like, again, ESPN, I am convinced that there's not data that backs this up, that says we have to talk NBA all the time. We have to talk NBA like our life depends on it. Because Pat McAfee does not talk NBA like his life depends on it. And I think he's doing okay. But my guess is that they care about basketball like Stephen A. Smith, so they think everybody else cares about basketball too. And I just don't think that that's actually the truth. So I thank, with all of my heart, I thank ESPN for talking about a hockey game they had that 4.4 million people in America watched, and that more people are probably going to watch on Thursday night, that they finally got around to it on Tuesday. Now, I was on Sirius XM on Sunday morning, and I went right in and started talking hockey. And we had phones, and people had opinions, and it was legit. And I say this because I know people cared. And I think ESPN missed the memo when they put together their Monday shows, and they scrambled for Tuesday, and they were like, oh, we better talk hockey because the people actually care about the United States versus Canada. So one of the things I discussed on Mad Dog Radio on Sirius XM, a channel that I am proud to be a part of, was I asked him, like, do you think that Mad Dog Russo watched the game? We were actually talking about this amongst the producer. I was like, you think Dog watched the game? And so Mad Dog Russo says he did watch the game. This is from his program, Mad Dog Unleashed. This was Mad Dog yesterday on his channel discussing his thoughts on the USA-Canada game in ways only Mad Dog could.
Two things I did not like about the game, and I know everybody thinks it's one of the greatest games I've ever seen. Canada only had 22 shots on goal. They put very little attack on in the third period. They did not play where they didn't have a lot of opportunity in that third period. It wasn't a free-for-all game. The first period was great. The game flattened out after that significantly, and they had no chance to get that tying goal of 2-2. None. Zero. That was my take on it. But I thought the game did not have, to me, and I'm not a hockey aficionado. I don't pretend to be, but I'm a sports aficionado. And I did not sense drama in the third period of that game. I did not sense it. And then the third thing I would say are the fights. I don't like things that are pre-orchestrated. I don't like things that have a fakeness or a WWE feel to them. And that did. They had 3 fights in 9 seconds. They all texted each other before the game. Saying, oh, let's get something going right away. To have three fights in 9 seconds. I know the fans in the arena loved it. I know the fans at home got emotionally into the game right away. That, to me, was a joke. That was fake. Let's all drop the gloves and kill each other in the first 9 seconds of the game. It wasn't organic. It was prearranged. It was not something that came through a rugged hit, a dirty play, physicality in the course of 60 minutes. It was, okay, I'll go after him. And then when I do that, you go after him. And then when that's done, you go after him. And they set that up before the game. That's fake. I didn't like that.
Okay. So I'm still not convinced that he watched the game. Again, talking about how, they only had 22 shots. Right, because the United States played a very defensive-heavy game. I do understand what he's saying about the fighting, though, because I was a little on the fence as far as the fighting was concerned. Like, when they started the game with a fight, to his point about it feeling kind of WWE-ish, it did kind of feel that way to me. Again, not that I felt like it was a fake fight where, again, the guy from Canada gets hit and then he pretends to go down and the way they do in wrestling, but it just kind of felt like Matthew Tkachuk was like, I'm going to fight. Down go the gloves. Like he did it for show. And he did do it for show. But I think there's kind of an anger element to USA Canada that he wanted in that. Again, I absolutely, but I mean, it had to be premeditated. Of course it was premeditated. The guy did it at the start of the game. I think what this is really about, and they won't say it, I even think the general manager of the Wild, who's the general manager of Team USA, was on Fox News today, which that kind of shocked me too. But I do think it was kind of like they boo our anthem, we'll show them, let's fight. Which again, that doesn't really appeal to me, but I do think it appeals to a lot of people. And I think it does appeal to a lot of people who are sports fans. But I mean, again, this idea that just because something's premeditated doesn't mean that it's fake. Doesn't mean that it's WWE. A lot of times when we have these beanball wars where a guy throws at another guy, it is premeditated. It's not just spur of the moment. I'm mad at this guy, I'm going to throw a fastball at him. But I didn't think it took away from the game. I mean, I thought the game was still great. And just because they played a little defense in the game doesn't mean that again, our problem with the NBA All-Star game is they don't even play any defense. Team USA just suffocated Canada in the third period. To me, that's good. Joey from Bellevue texts in our phone line, shared by WilsonCountyHunter.com, says the NBA is full of sissies. They are soft. That is a sentiment I agree with. LD from McMinnville says, everyone has heard of the dunk contest winner. Mac, I believe it's McClung. Ian, what do you know about Mac McClung, the dunk contest winner?
He jumped over a car.
But what do you know about him, like, outside of that? Outside of the fact that he's won the last 3 dunk contests in a row, outside of the fact that he's a G Leaguer, outside of the fact that he jumped over a car, and outside of the fact that he's white.
I got nothing.
I mean, I've never heard of this guy. And like, maybe I'm stupid. I have never heard of this guy before.
So he plays in the G League?
I think so. What happened to the days of, Michael Jordan doing the dunk contest? Kobe Bryant doing the dunk contest? And I'm not saying that LeBron has to do it every year. But again, the league does have young stars.
Dominique
and
Wilkins
every year
used to
there
be
are
awesome
new
in
young
those.
stars.
Yeah, Dominique Wilkins, he was a good star. He was always in the dunk contest.
So what are we doing? Like, what are we doing?
Sean
As
Kemp,
far as
he used to be in that bad boy. Spud Webb, when he was, oh man, that was fun. D Brown, right? When he did.
Who is going to watch a dunk contest full of nobodies? And I still, by the way, I didn't go looking for it today. I looked for it yesterday. And I was trying to find the TV ratings for Saturday night, and I could not find them. And my gut is the reason that we can't find them is because the networks that get them don't want you to know them with how bad they were.
We have some new TV numbers for the hockey. Chris Johnston, was he Sportsnet now? The Athletic and TSN. The NHL says 10.1 million North American viewers tuned in for Saturday's USA-Canada game, topping every non-Stanley Cup final game since 2014.
Yeah, you can't give me a North American number. Can't do it.
So, but
I don't care what they're doing in Canada. Of course, they're going to watch hockey in Canada. 4.4 million Americans. So that means it's 6 million people watching Canada. I mean, that's a lot. Again, I'm glad ESPN decided to get their heads out of their ass for a game in which they have, and they put a hockey guy on there to talk about it. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the program. We do have some news that, in theory, might And I mean, this might be affecting the Titans and their quarterback plans. We'll get to that coming up next. Hey, due to the call for inclement weather moving into the Middle Tennessee area, Smashville Live for tomorrow night has been canceled. So if you were planning on that, I'm sorry, but that has been canceled. And Nashville's best deal of the week is from Bavarian Beer House. That's right, located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more, and their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals and get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last.
What can you tell us about Minnesota's plan for Darnold?
There's a sense in the Vikings building of not necessarily wanting to let a 27-year-old quarterback who just had the year Sam Darnold had walk out the building and get nothing in return. The question is, can they afford it? Can they franchise him? Can they sign him to a long-term deal? And what does that mean for the future of J.J. McCarthy, who a year ago was the 10th pick in the draft, and ideally from the Vikings standpoint will be their long-term starter at the position? You look at J.J. McCarthy's cap numbers over the next 3 years, it's $5 million, $6 million, $7 million. You start talking about re-signing Sam Darnold or franchising him at numbers like that, you really have to adjust your plan for the rest of your roster build if you do that. Now, the Vikings are going over their options. It is entirely possible they make an effort to bring Sam Darnold back. It's entirely possible they franchise him, similarly to what I said about T. Higgins, in an effort to work out a long-term deal or maybe get something in return in trade. But these are complicated issues that the Vikings are working through here over the next couple of weeks, and right now it's hard to predict how it turns out.
Okay, so that was from Dan Graziano this morning, and apparently, again, I thought it was a slam dunk the Vikings were going to tag Sam Darnold. Then I went to the Super Bowl. We talked to Albert Breer, and there was just a vibe at the Super Bowl that was Sam Darnold is probably going to be able to go out and be a free agent. Now you just heard from Graziano there where the tea leaves are starting to maybe circle back to, no, they may actually tag Sam Darnold. That we shall see. But we have a little breaking news. This coming from Dan Graziano of ESPN. Follow me on this because I've read this multiple times and I'm not sure I understand this. Quote, per a league source, the Vikings and corner Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy was a potential franchise tag candidate for Minnesota. If they had tagged him, obviously they couldn't tag Darnold. Per a league source, the Vikings and corner Byron Murphy have agreed to push back the void date on his contract. Originally, the deal voided 23 days prior to the start of the league year, either today or tomorrow. Now it's the day before the start of the league year, which means Murphy cannot be franchised since that date is past the deadline for teams to use the franchise tag. Interestingly, Graziano writes, they did not reach the same agreement with quarterback Sam Darnold, whose contract still voids 23 days before the start of the league year. If they don't do a new deal with Darnold before the contract voids, then $5 million in remaining signing bonus proration would accelerate into the 2025 cap as dead money for Sam Darnold. The upshot here, Graziano writes, they can still franchise Darnold, but cannot franchise Murphy or Aaron Jones, who also pushed his void date back. Ian, do you understand any of that?
I guess I understand that they can't franchise tag the two guys they just reworked, but that's about it.
So again, basically, I'm in agreement with you, which is I'm not exactly sure what that means other than they can still tag Darnold, but they can't tag Murphy and they can't tag Aaron Jones. Were they ever going to tag Aaron Jones?
No.
So again, Minnesota has the tag. The guy ESPN wrote a story about yesterday saying they could tag Byron Murphy. They're not going to be able to tag, which takes us back to Darnold. So I asked Matt Caller, who covers the Vikings. I did his podcast when the Titans played the Vikings. I texted Matt Caller yesterday, and I said, Darnold tag, yes or no? He said, I think they're tagging him, but it could mean a trade. Nobody really knows because they're not a leaky team. So he thinks Darnold's getting the tag, which again kind of takes us back to the drawing board. There's a part of me that is very excited about the idea of Sam Darnold getting the franchise tag, because then it would mean that I was right and everybody who doubted that was wrong. And I would love nothing more than to say, I was right. Ha, 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 ha. But at the same time, I really don't want to part with the 35th pick in the draft for Sam Darnold. Now, I'll do it. Like, I will legitimately give up that pick. As much as I would hate to do it, I would give up the 35th pick, acquire Darnold, and sign him to a contract. And I know you guys hate that. I can hear the yelling at the car radios right now. I can hear the screaming. but I just don't think there's a better option. I asked Trevor when he was on the show last week, I said, what would you rather do? Cam Ward at 1 and somebody else at 35, or Abdul Carter at 1 and Sam Darnold with the 35th pick? And he said Darnold with the 35th pick. Again, I know you guys don't like that. I know you guys want that pick, and I want picks too. But Sam Darnold is the best available quarterback. He's not an old pawpaw like Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, both of whom are coming off Achilles. He's not Derek Carr, who has an injured hand and who costs $40 million, and who, again, I don't see even being available out of New Orleans. He's a 27-year-old first ballot Pro Bowl quarterback from a year ago. So I almost wonder if Minnesota almost gave the impression, because Minnesota, there was a lot of talk about how a Darnold contract could be similar to Baker Mayfield. And I believe Baker Mayfield signed a 3-year, $100 million contract. So an average value of around $33 million, and I think like 70 of it's guaranteed. So Baker signed, 30-ish million. And there was a sentiment at the Super Bowl that Darnold could receive that similar kind of contract. Again, $30 million a year-ish. And Albert Breer talked about how maybe Minnesota lets Darnold go out there and they see what the market for Darnold is. And when they see that there's a team out there willing to pay $40 million, they say, all right, goodbye. It was nice knowing you. Thank you. We'll take our comp pick in the future and on our way. But I'm not sure if that's really a possibility here. Because again, to tag him, they're at $40 million. So now they're gripping with the idea of, is it worth risking the 10 extra million that we'd have to pay Sam Darnold to take the risk of tagging him to make somebody pay us for him? Maybe this is a good thing, because maybe there would be a team that Sam Darnold would go to in free agency over you, like the Raiders, like the Steelers, something like that. And if they tag him, then you can work out the deal and trade for him. But again, I don't believe in overpaying when there's 5 receivers and I need one of the 5. I believe in overpaying when there's one guy out of the 5 who I covet. Jacksonville did this with Christian Kirk a couple years ago, where it was like, hey, he's the best receiver on the market, and in order for us, the worst team in the league at this point in time, to get the receiver, we have to overpay. And this is the one we want. And I'm fine with that. But man, I'm a little bummed out because it's starting to feel like Minnesota's going to tag Darnold. And if Minnesota tags Darnold, I don't think that means they're going to trade J.J. McCarthy. Now, if they sign Darnold to an extension, then they almost have to trade J.J. McCarthy. But again, when it comes to this Darnold stuff, I don't exactly know the whole reasoning for reworking a deal with Byron Murphy. But I do think that it does kind of clear the deck for them to be able to set you up for a Sam Darnold tag. And it depresses me. It really does. It makes me sad. I want just a straight free agent of Sam Darnold, and I would give him $164 million on a 4-year contract, and I'd give him a fat signing bonus, and I'd give him $80 million guaranteed, but it'd really be more like $100 million. I would overpay for Sam Darnold. But I love the idea of overpaying it more when it is just cash than overpaying Sam Darnold when it includes cash and the 35th overall pick in the draft. And that's the sad part. Again, it sounds like I went to the Super Bowl and everybody went out there and they made it sound like Darnold wasn't getting tagged. And now it sounds like Darnold's getting tagged, with the latest news from Dan Graziano being they've reworked Byron Murphy's deal, so they can't tag Byron Murphy. Again, I don't know why he said Aaron Jones. No one's going to tag Aaron Jones. But Aaron Jones, they can't tag him either. So it means that it looks like they're probably going to tag Darnold. 615-737-1025. I am bummed out on this if they end up tagging Darnold just because I got my hopes up for whatever that's worth. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones. Plus, the one positive of Sam Darnold being tagged in Minnesota. We'll get to that coming up. Again, the report from Dan Graziano. It's hilarious because, again, 2 weeks ago it was like, oh, no, they're not going to tag him. Kevin O'Connell went on Florio's show at the Super Bowl and said he's earned the right to be a free agent. A lot of people heard that and said they're not going to tag him. People thought, no, they're not going to tag him. And yet here we are. And now it's starting to look like they're going to tag him. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Do you remember why you said he wasn't going to get tagged?
I thought it would be cost prohibitive for them to move forward with the rest of their roster.
Cost prohibitive against what?
against the salary cap, which you think is
Against
imaginary.
the cap, you said they can't do it. They don't have enough cap space. The cap.
Jared.
And guess
Jared,
what?
No one reasonable in the world thinks that your cap take is smart. It's really dumb, dude. Don't make yourself look dumber by doing the cap fake.
No, go ahead.
For about 10 straight weeks, everybody said, yeah, they're going to tag him. And the cap didn't seem to matter. Then he had the 2 bad games. And now everybody I talked to at the Super Bowl seems to think
this isn't about everybody. It's about you. I asked you about you.
About me?
Yeah. You insisted he was going to be tagged, and you were a revolutionary because you were ahead of it. So now, is he going to be tagged?
Again, the popular
No, your
I
opinion.
would tag him.
Your opinion.
I guess he's not. They seem to.
Oh my
Kevin
God, you
O'Connell
were
went on Pro
wrong. So
Football Talk
tell us about
and
you
said
being
he's
wrong.
earned the right to be a free agent.
Okay, so were you wrong about him being tagged then?
That was PK on Friday. And I said, if they tag Sam Darnold, you are coming on the Stillman and Company program because PK ready to take a victory lap that Sam Darnold is not getting tagged. And again, on Friday, and you heard in my voice, I'm like, hey, I'd tag him. Like if I was Minnesota, even if I loved J.J. McCarthy, I'd tag him. Because there's just, again, supply and demand. There aren't any quarterbacks out there. The quarterbacks in the draft, it looks like they stink. I know. Some people think they're good. I know people said that about the 17 class and Mahomes was in that class. I got it. But it looks like Ward and Sanders are not it. So, again, you can't go to the draft to get them. Certainly, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, all these, forget about it. Free agency. It's all either busts, Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields, or these old pawpaws that they still can play a little bit. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, etc. Darnold is the only guy out there that A, can play. He can play. He proved it last year. And B, is not past 33 years old. He's the only guy. So if you're Minnesota and you've got the only guy, go ahead, tag him, and then see if anybody will trade for him. That's what I would do. Last year, the supply and the demand, it wasn't the same, which is why Tampa Bay was able to let Baker Mayfield go to market and then work out a contract with him. Because everybody that needed a quarterback could either go sign a Kirk Cousins or go draft a Bo Nix. So it was like, we'll be okay. You couldn't do that this year. If Baker Mayfield was a pending free agent, teams would be bending over backwards trying to get Baker Mayfield. You could have had Baker Mayfield for a ham sandwich 2 years ago. But again, it's supply and demand. So I say all of that. Ian, at the Super Bowl, because you obviously listened to the entire show at the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get the vibe, whether it was Breer or maybe it was Florio who came on the show and we talked about it? Did you get the same vibe I got, that Sam Darnold was not going to get the franchise tag and that the Titans, as well as the Raiders or anybody else, might be able to go sign Sam Darnold?
I mean, definitely didn't feel like the franchise tag was a guarantee with Sam Darnold. I mean,
okay.
It felt pretty much up in the air.
Now, just based on some of the reporting, do you think Darnold's going to get the tag?
I'd still say it's pretty much up in the air.
But if you had to pick, just like I made you pick USA Canada yesterday?
If I had to pick tag or no tag?
Yeah.
I don't know. Part of me still wants to lean no tag. I don't know why. I think part of me is just like, are they really going to pay that much money for 1 year of Darnold and just have McCarthy sit the bench again? I know that's like the money's not a huge deal with McCarthy, right? Because he's a rookie and it's whatever. Sure. But I mean, for spending that much money on 2 quarterbacks combined, it's probably not out of the question crazy, but I just wonder about the asset management there, you know?
So I think the tag is in order to recruit value for Sam Darnold. Like, I do buy
the tag just for a trade.
Yeah. I mean, I do. Again, I was looking at Minnesota's draft choices. They pick at 24 and 97, and then they don't pick again until the top of the 5th. Like, so they don't have a second round pick, they don't have a 4th round pick, and they don't have a 6th round pick.
So someone's going to trade for him for a 1-year expensive bridge?
Well, you're signing, he's no bridge. I mean, you are, Sam Darnold is your starting quarterback.
If they tag him, you'd have to work out a deal?
Well, you don't have to work out a deal, but you would work out a deal or else you wouldn't trade for him.
Okay. And so you would trade for him, not him play not on the tag, but rework your own contract?
Correct. The same as the L'Jarius Sneed thing. You don't trade the 35th pick in the draft for a guy with an expiring contract.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, Sam Darnold doesn't even have to sign the tender. Like, you could make the trade. And here's the other thing that Minnesota has, and this is why it's important that they have a working relationship with Sam Darnold. And I don't know how this will go over, but what Minnesota has is Minnesota can tag Darnold. They then have the option to rescind the tag, which would make Darnold a free agent. So they could tag Darnold, and then they could see if anybody out there is willing to pony up for Darnold. And if nobody is, then they can rescind the tag and Darnold can become a free agent. Again, I don't think they would do that, but that's why you have to have a good working relationship. Also, what they could do is they could tag him and he could sign the tender and then work out a deal with Minnesota the way that L'Jarius Sneed technically worked out a deal with Kansas City and then be traded to you. It's very complicated. But at the same time, I think that they're doing this in order to recoup draft capital, and they look at it as a $40 million risk. And that's why I think they're going to do it. Again, there's just not any supply at quarterback. And there are all these teams that need a quarterback. Tennessee needs a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. The Giants need a quarterback. The Raiders need a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. The Steelers need a quarterback. And outside of Darnold, again, a 28-year-old Pro Bowler, and I don't mean Pro Bowler like how Drake May made the Pro Bowl. I mean like a real Pro Bowler, like a legitimate, first ballot top 3 quarterback in the NFC. Outside of that, Aaron Rodgers, old and injured. Kirk Cousins, old and injured and got benched. Russell Wilson, old. Justin Fields, sucks. Daniel Jones, sucks. Mac Jones, sucks. Gardner Minshew, sucks. Like, that's all that's out there. Jameis Winston, that's it. And Jameis Winston never had a season like Sam Darnold did last year where he won 14 games. And I think it's going to be tough for the Giants to sell their fans on Sam Darnold because he failed with the Jets, and I don't think the Jets can go get Darnold. But I think every team that doesn't have a quarterback should want Sam Darnold. Every single one of them. One text says, what about the 2 other teams Darnold completely sucked on? He has one good year, and oh my God, Sam Darnold. He didn't suck in Carolina. Again, let's use Baker Mayfield as the example here. Baker Mayfield was, I believe, the rookie of the year his first year. Then the second year, they put too much on his plate with Freddie Kitchens as his coach. That didn't work out. The third year, Baker made the playoffs and won the first playoff game in Cleveland Browns history since Belichick was the coach. Then the next year, Baker got hurt, played through it, but struggled. Then they acquired Deshaun Watson. Then Baker went to Carolina. Baker stunk there too. Then Baker went to the Rams. Then Baker was a free agent. Does that mean Baker sucks? Because it didn't work out in all those other places? Or was it Cleveland and Carolina that was stupid when it came to Baker? And I think Baker's pretty good. And right now, with the Titans, who could have acquired Baker Mayfield, they could have dumped Ryan Tannehill and acquired Baker Mayfield prior to the 2023 season. I'd kill for Baker Mayfield to be the quarterback of the Titans right now. And I kind of think a lot of you would too, right? Well, by the way, Baker was 1-5 with that Carolina Panther team that Sam Darnold was 4-2 with. Same team. You cannot get a better comparison than that. Does Baker suck? Because again, Sam Darnold was 4-2. Everyone just says, oh, he sucked in Carolina. Corey Curtis said that Sam Darnold's been fired by every team he's ever had. And I said that's not true. He wasn't fired in Carolina. His contract ran out. He wasn't fired by Minnesota. His contract has run out. That is unless you think Derrick Henry got fired here. And you know he didn't. 615-737-1025. Coming up next on the program, if one of ESPN's top scout was my top scout, the decision on what to do with the number one pick would be pretty cut and dry. We'll get to that next. Hey, let's give something away, because why not? Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. And you'll win a family 4-pack of tickets to the Athletes Unlimited professional basketball games at Nashville's Municipal Auditorium this Sunday. Stars playing include Alicia Clark, Sydney Colson, Lexi Brown, Jordan Horston, Isabel Harrison, Asia Taylor, Jude Schimmel, and more. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios and presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Trevor Matich in 30 minutes. By the way, no Barry Trotz this week. Barry again there on the break with the Four Nations face-off. Barry will join us next Tuesday. But I stumbled upon an article from ESPN.com that I found fascinating. And I don't know how many people truly understand what this means, but I'm going to lay it out. So Matt Miller of ESPN is one of their 4 draft analysts. Mel Kiper Jr., Field Yates, Matt Miller, Jordan Reed. And Matt Miller put together his compilation of players with first-round grades. And this is how I know whether or not someone I'm talking to knows ball or is truly a moron. For instance, I had somebody who, again, I wouldn't consider to be media, but does have somewhat of a platform, talk to me about how the Chiefs busted with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round. Yes, with the 32nd pick. Traditionally, there are 20 to 24 guys that have a traditional first-round grade, which means that when you look at them, when you scout them, when you evaluate them, they are a first-round prospect. So what does that usually mean when you're picking 30th in the draft? You're not drafting a first-round player. But what are you going to do? Just give up the pick? What are you going to sit there and you're going to say, well, we only have 20 first-round graded players, so we're picking at 29, so let's just not pick. That's not how that works. You pick a player in the first round, but they don't have a first-round grade. And you, the NFL team, cannot control how many first-round graded players there are in a given year. Some years are worse than others. Like, I believe it was 2022 when Jerry Jones got up there and showed his draft board and said, we only had 16 graded players in the first round when they drafted Tyler Smith somewhere in the 20s. I say this because if ESPN's Matt Miller was the head scout of the Tennessee Titans, they probably would be in a corner with what to do with the first overall pick. According to Matt Miller, 12 players in this draft have first-round grades. 12. And none of them are quarterbacks. Miller writes, quote, 1 year after seeing 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round, the 2025 class has 0 passers with a true first-round grade. Colorado's Shedeur Sanders and Miami's Cam Ward would have both been ranked behind Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and even J.J. McCarthy in 2024. Both Sanders and Ward are talented and have the potential to rise in the pre-draft process, but I wouldn't be comfortable calling them first-round prospects based on their past season's tape. That doesn't mean they won't be drafted in the first round, though. In fact, it's a safe bet that both get drafted in the top 5 selections because quarterbacks always go early. According to Matt Miller, here are the 12 in order. And I will give you the player he compares them to. Number 1, Abdul Carter at Penn State with the comparison of Micah Parsons. Number 2, Travis Hunter as a wide receiver with the comparison to Odell Beckham Jr. Number 3, Will Johnson, the corner at Michigan with the comparison to Patrick Surtain II. Number 4, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan with a comparison to Baltimore's Nnamdi Madubuike. Number 5, Jalen Walker of the Georgia Bulldogs with a comparison to Harold Landry III. Did you hear that? Harold Landry. Number 6, Ashton Genty, the running back out of Boise State with a comparison to Alvin Kamara. Number 7, Will Campbell, the tackle out of LSU with a comparison to Deion Dawkins. Number 8, Kelvin Banks, the tackle from Texas with a comparison to Rashawn Slater. Number 9, and I found this comp to be very fascinating. Number 9, Tyler Warren, the tight end at Penn State, who, by the way, I freaking love.
He does look pretty good.
I drop my freaking pants over Tyler Warren because I think he's freaking awesome. He's not Bowers, but he might be like a step behind. He has the comparison to be Rob Gronkowski. Jahadi Barron at Texas. Never heard of him. I'm sure he's great. He compares him to Brian Branch. Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, is compared to Trevor Matich. How did Michigan suck so bad last year? And number 12, Michael Williams from Georgia compared to Trayvon Walker. 12. That's it. Again, you can say, but Jared, what? No. He's telling you, if he's your head scout, he's telling you there are 12 players with a first-round grade. So again, let's start with the premise that Matt Miller is right. That Matt Miller's board is our board, which is a very big if. Don't you have to make sure, if there are only 12 first-round graded players, don't you have to make sure that you get a first-round player? What is the point of sucking so bad last year and getting a second-round player? So it has to be one of the 12. So that takes out your quarterbacks. And this is why I told you that, again, if Matt Miller was my GM or Matt Miller was my head scout or my director of college scouting or whatever you want to call it, I would be backed in a corner. I'd have to draft Abdul Carter. Because, again, I'm not taking a running back, a corner, or a DT. They are not worth the first overall pick. Goodbye. Sorry. Like, Aaron Donald is the only DT ever that would be worth a number one pick. So goodbye to half the list, because that means Will Johnson's out and Jahadi Barron's out and Ashton Chanty's out and Mason Graham's out. So goodbye to them. Again, the tackles, Rashawn Slater, Deion Dawkins, they're good left tackles, but they're not Hall of Fame left tackles. Can you really take a Taylor Lewan caliber player with the first overall pick? Again, it'd be one thing if they were Trent Williams level, but that's not the comparison. Deion Dawkins is a good left tackle. Rashawn Slater is a good left tackle, but they're not, again, franchise-changing tackles. Can't take them first overall. The fifth best player on his list is compared to Harold Landry. If I told you, okay, you have the shot to get Abdul Carter, who, again, compares to Micah Parsons, but you could trade back and maybe pick up an extra first next year, or maybe pick up a second this year, or you can trade back a little bit, and you can get Harold Landry, how would you feel about it? Goodbye, Jalen Walker. So that leaves me with three players: Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Tyler Warren. And once again, Tyler Warren, the comp is Gronk. And Gronk is a generational talent, or Gronk was a generational talent who would be worth the first overall pick in a draft. So those are my options. Well, I'm not picking a tight end number one overall over a pass rusher. So as much as I love Tyler Warren, he's out. So now it's back to Carter versus Hunter. And with Carter versus Hunter, again, let's use the comps. Micah Parsons or Odell Beckham Jr. Again, by that logic, you take the pass rusher. So if these grades are right, if there are only 12 players worthy of a first-round grade, and those are the 12, it's like playing a game of Guess Who. Based off that analysis, I am in a corner picking strictly between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. And Travis Hunter, again, profiles to be Odell Beckham, a very good receiver. But Odell Beckham's not a Hall of Famer. He's not Jefferson. He's not Chase. He's not Calvin Johnson. He's not any of those guys. Micah Parsons probably is on his way to the Hall of Fame. I guess I have to take Abdul Carter. Now, if there were a lot of guys that profiled as elite level players in this draft, then I could trade to 3. And I know I'd get one. Again, maybe that is the only spot you can trade to, because you'll know you'll get Travis Hunter or Tyler Warren or whatever. But what you cannot do, and I have heard the old man talk about this, is you cannot convince yourself to take a guy in the first round because you need a position. You cannot lie to yourself, and you cannot lie to your board, which will then give you the mistake of drafting Harold Landry over Micah Parsons. Can't do it. Imagine if Jacksonville had Aiden Hutchinson instead of Trevon Walker. You cannot do that. So, again, I'm not saying that Matt Miller, that he's the gospel and that there's only 12 first-round players, but that does kind of seem to be the consensus. Let's get to your phones on that. 615-737-1025. Plus, coming up next, one ESPN reporter ran a poll about whether or not the Titans would make a certain trade with the Giants. And I wasn't so much shocked about what the offer was, as much as I really was the response. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. if you had the number 1 pick and you had gotten hired, what would you do with it? Would you go Hunter, Carter, Sanders, Ward, and the phone doesn't ring?
I'm doing that if the phone. What about me wanting to trade back to build an offensive line?
So you want to trade back. You expect the phone to ring and you want to trade back.
I would want to seriously consider trading back. And again, that's not my history. You know that.
Sure.
I've been always forward move. I just think in that spot right now, the way that things are playing out, that it feels like that's the right move to trade back and do some really good gathering of talent. Because that organization is in a good spot. Borgonzi knows how to build that kind of a team, and I think it would be good for them.
What do you expect out of that pick? Like if you were to trade it, would you expect, I remember what you paid to go up and get Julio Jones. Yeah. Like, I don't think Julio Jones is in this draft. So would the compensation be lesser? Because that's not Joe Burrow at number 1 who you'd be taking if you take Cam Ward. It's not Julio Jones if you take Travis Hunter. Would you expect the compensation to be less?
I'd probably expect it to be a little less.
There you go. That was Thomas Dimitroff, former NFL general manager on our program at the Super Bowl. So I saw this yesterday. Jordan Renan, who does what TD does for ESPN covering the Giants, put out a tweet and said, would you trade for the Giants, number 3, number 65 in the 3rd round, and a 2026 3rd-round pick to the Tennessee Titans for the number 1 overall pick? The 2 options were, yes, get me the QB. B, no, I need all the picks. And I'm not, again, surprised by Jordan Renan throwing it out there. In fact, as I did the trade chart studies, if you are looking at the stream, I'm putting it right there in front of the camera. I took the Browns, the Giants, the Raiders, the Jets, and I said, okay, here's what it would take if I loved the player with the 1st overall pick in order to get me to move off it. Here's what the trade chart says. Here's what I would take if I didn't love the player. And if I didn't love the player for the Giants, I would need their 1st, their 2nd. Oh, excuse me. I would need their 1st, their 3rd, and their 3rd next year, which again I would be giving up a 2nd-round pick to the Giants by making that kind of move if I don't like the player. 51% of New York Giant fans said no to 2 3rd-round picks and moving from 3 to 1. Holy crap. First and foremost, if you're the Giants and you make the move from 3 to 1 for 2 3rd-round picks, isn't the value of getting Abdul Carter versus not getting Abdul Carter worth 2 3rd-round picks? That's what you're giving up. 2 3rd-round picks to getting Abdul Carter or getting your quarterback. And even then, they're like, no. Here's what the trade chart says. If the Titans were to want to deal with the Giants, the trade chart says a 1st, which would be 3, 34 in the 2nd round, 65 in the 3rd, and then the Titans would have to give 169, which is their 5th rounder, which they acquired. I believe that is Kansas City's 5th rounder. So your 1st pick and Kansas City's 5th rounder, which is for DeAndre Hopkins, in exchange for 3, 34, and 65. Instead, they want to give you a 3rd next year, and even their fans, 51%, are like, no, we're good. And I am just like, goodness gracious. Now, again, if you do this, if you were to make that trade, and again, even the Giant fans are still saying, no, we don't want to make that trade. We think that's a bad trade. But if the Giants were to offer that trade for you, is it enough to lose Abdul Carter? Again, let's use the comps. Micah Parsons versus Odell Beckham. And let's add Tyler Warren in there because the comp is Gronk. I really like Tyler Warren. And I can take a tight end who's a game changer at 3. I don't know if I can take him at 1. I can take him at 3. I can take a corner, Will Johnson, at 3. Is that enough to give up on Abdul Carter? That's actually a question I'm going to ask Trevor, which is, are 2 3rd-round picks including one in next year's draft, so it won't even help you this year, are 2 extra third-round picks worth giving up Abdul Carter? Because the way it seems to me in the draft is it seems, and this is what everybody keeps kind of alluding to, that it is Carter and Hunter and then everybody else. And Hunter is a good wide receiver prospect. He's a great corner prospect. Well, if it's a great corner prospect versus a great pass rush prospect, I'm taking the great pass rush prospect every time. Even if I have good pass rushers, I will still take the good pass rush prospect. My team has Arden Key. We need it. Again, like, are 2/3 worth losing out on Abdul Carter? That's the question I have. That's what I'm going to ask Trev. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Caleb says, Harold Fannin will be just as good, if not better, than Tyler Warren and won't cost a high pick. Ian, who the hell is Harold Fannin?
Never heard of him.
So here's something we got to stop doing. And look, I understand. There are guys that get drafted in the 3rd round, that get drafted in the 5th round, that get drafted in the 7th round, that end up being good players. The greatest player who ever lived was picked with the 199th pick, and everybody knows.
Tight end from Bowling Green.
Oh, yay. But what a lot of people do around draft time, that I just doesn't make any sense. And I'm fine with somebody telling me, you know what, this guy, he can be a starter. We can take him in the 2nd round. He can be a starter. And were we better off taking this tight end in the 2nd round who's going to be a starter as opposed to this tight end in the 1st round who's going to be a superstar? You see what I'm saying? This reminds me again of the Brock Bowers stuff last year. Oh no, we can't take a tight end with the 7th pick, Jared. It's like Brock Bowers is a superstar. Forget about tight end. Superstar. I think Tyler Warren is a superstar. I also think Ashton Genty's a superstar. And because I think Ashton Genty is a superstar, I'm still not taking him because he's running back. But this idea, oh no, you just go get somebody else. We're doing this with quarterbacks too. People are like, I don't want Sanders and Ward. I'm trying to think of Dylan Gabriel. That's who I want. One texter, sometimes people don't understand this. One texter says, Jared, you are crazy. Did you say Sam Darnold is a top 3 quarterback in the NFC? That is crazy talk, says Philip. To which I replied in the text line. I said 3 quarterbacks are named to the original Pro Bowl roster in each conference, and he was one of the 3 in the NFC. That is a fact. I think Jared Goff and Jaden Daniels were the other 2. That is a fact. Texter says, that doesn't mean he's top 5 in the NFC. No, it means he's top 3. That's what it means. They picked the 3 best. That's how it works. And I love it. I love it because it's like, well, that doesn't count. People are like, it doesn't count because it's the Pro Bowl. Right, but I'm talking about the original Pro Bowl roster, not the Drake May is a Pro Bowler. LD from McMinnville says, give me the best pass rusher from the SEC. Well, they compare that guy to Harold Landry. So, yay! Harold Landry with the first pick. God, that'll get somebody fired. All right, Trevor up next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller's been in business since 1990. They are family owned and operated. And Jimmy Hiller was recently named amongst the most admired CEOs because he truly cares for his team and he truly cares for his clients. And again, I know this because I use Hiller. And I know Jimmy Hiller. Hiller takes care of the customer on every job, and they stand behind their work with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, they will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call that fish truck today. Stillman and company. And again, I am obsessed with this Matt Miller story at ESPN. 12 players with first-round grades in this year's draft class. Again, the 12. Abdul Carter, number 1. Travis Hunter, 2. Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, 3. Mason Graham, the D tackle at Michigan, 4. Jalen Walker at 5, the pass rusher from Georgia, who he compares to Harold Landry. So that's where we are now. The 5th best player in the class comps to Harold Landry. Woof. Ashton Genty, the running back out of Boise at 6. Will Campbell, the tackle from LSU at 7. Kelvin Banks, the tackle at Texas at 8. Tyler Warren, the tight end at Penn State at 9. Jahadi Barron, the corner out of Texas at 10. Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan at 11. And Michael Williams, the pass rusher out of Georgia at 12. Again, only 12 first-round graded players. Trevor Matich joins us now on the program. No quarterbacks, by the way, in that grouping. Trevor is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, I immediately, when I take these 12 players, I cut out the guys who don't profile to be franchise-changing players, which to me is Jalen Walker on down. If the guy comps to be Harold Landry, that's not good enough for the first pick. I'm also not taking a corner with the first overall pick in the draft. Don't think they're that valuable. Kind of leaves me with one choice, Abdul Carter. So let's start there. If the Titans make the pick with the first overall pick, are they forced into a corner based off of positional value and how good Carter is and how bad the rest of the field is that they almost have to go Abdul Carter number 1?
I think they would. I mean, if they went with Travis Hunter and planned to play him for receiver, a receiver hasn't been taken in the at the number 1 pick in like 30 years. I think it was like 1996 was the last time a receiver was taken with the number 1 pick. Pass rushers tend to go with the number 1 pick from time to time if there's not a quarterback that'll go there. And I think the Titans are kind of stuck in that case. I would not take either one of the top 2 quarterbacks, Cam Watershed or Sanders, with the number 1 pick. I wouldn't even consider it, although I would want to make everybody else in the league think that I'm going to take them. That gives them a better chance of maybe trading down. But in terms of the practicality of it, I think they're kind of stuck with Carter or Hunter. And of those 2, I think it's a no-brainer to take the pass rusher, Carter.
Okay, along those lines, there's all these trade back conversations. And, Jordan Renan, who covers the Giants for ESPN, threw out the idea of the Giants trading their 3rd-round pick, 65, and next year's 3rd-round pick to move up to 1, which would move the Titans to 3. Now, let's say that the Giants do that for a quarterback. That means that they would be taking Sanders or Ward, so Carter or Hunter would still be there. But I have a hard time believing Abdul Carter would still be available with the 3rd overall pick for whatever reason. Is a 3rd-round pick this year and a 3rd-round pick next year, is that enough to get me to move off of Abdul Carter?
I wouldn't. Not for that being the difference, because an elite pass rusher, I think Micah Parsons, I think, is a great comp, the linebacker out of Dallas. That guy is a game changer, a game wrecker. Single-handedly, he changes what offenses can do. And he forces offenses to game plan for him. Where is he? Will he rush? Will he not? Over which position? How do we shift our blocking because of that? How do we shift our pass patterns based on the shorter drops the quarterback can take because he's not going to have as much time? All those different things in Carter. I expect Carter to be that same guy in the NFL. And if I'm going to get 2 3rd-round draft choices on top of, not getting him, let's say he's not there. I mean, let's say the Giants at number 1 in that scenario, that hypothetical scenario. Let's say that they take one of the quarterbacks. Cleveland will then very likely take Abdul Carter because Myles Garrett, their great pass rusher, wants out, and they may have to move him. Well, that puts the Titans at number 3, and they would then probably take Travis Hunter and then have 2 number 3s. And the truth of it is that it's so valuable to be able to disrupt the quarterback with a pass rush that I would not think that those 2 3s are worth losing out on Carter. If it were more, we could talk. But 2 3s, you're talking about 2 guys. Both of them will probably make the team. One of them might start relatively early. The other one will probably be a pretty good backup. And is that enough of a difference really to pass up who could be a generational pass rusher? No.
Trevor, do you agree with Matt Miller's assessment that there are 12? And I know you're not Mel. I know you don't give grades on these players, but essentially 12 first-round level players. Does that number surprise you?
That doesn't really surprise me. Part of the reason is that normally that number is bolstered by a bunch of quarterbacks. You'll have 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks some years that would be in the first round. And this year they don't have a single quarterback with a first round grade. At least a lot of people don't. And so when you start to look at that, and even some of those guys, I don't know that they really ought to have a first round grade on them. But there's it doesn't really surprise me. And so then what that means is the farther you drop back, the less value you're going to get for the draft position. People say that this is a tough draft for the Titans to be drafting high in each of the rounds that they have a pick. I think the opposite is true because there aren't that many elite players. The higher they pick, the more likely it is that they will get a generational impact guy. And if they trade back and then trade back again, now they're into the realm of the friend zone where, yeah, it's pretty good. It's all right to hang around, but it's not someone you're going to marry. And so, yeah, I think that 12 guys have a first round grade. It's low, but as you look at the guys that are there, the rest of them, I mean, Mel Kiper has Malachi Starks, for example, the safety out of Georgia, at number 20. So he'll go in the first round, but does he have a first round grade? Well, he was very, very inconsistent this year. You've got Tyler Booker, who's in the guard from Alabama, is at 23, according to Mel Kiper. Does he have a first round grade? No. But will he go in the first round? Probably, because who else?
Well, and again, I said this, you can't make 32 first round grades. Like you can't just because it's a first round pick. Trevor with us on the program. I do want your thought because of this group, and I haven't studied it. I haven't watched it. The one guy who, man, I'd love to have on my team is Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. I mean, I would take Abdul Carter 1. I would take Travis Hunter 2. But I'm not convinced that Warren might not be the third or fourth best player in this class. Matt Miller compares him to Gronk. If he ends up being Gronk, he might be worth the first overall pick in a draft. What do you think of Tyler Warren at the next level? And how does he compare to Brock Bowers from last year?
He's bigger than Brock Bowers. He's not quite as fast as Brock Bowers, but from a standpoint of matchups, he's a very similar guy. Bowers came into Georgia from high school in Napa, California, with the scouting report that he has the size of a tight end, the speed of a receiver, and the moves of a running back. And he showed that in the SEC, and he showed it again his rookie year in the NFL. Warren doesn't have all those different things, but Penn State moved him outside and let him run routes like a wide receiver. And he was very effective. Teams couldn't cover him out there because if you use a corner to cover him, he's going to be too big and physical. He's 6'6", almost 260 pounds. But he's got really good speed. If you move a linebacker out there, well, that linebacker is not going to be able to run with him and cover all the route tree that Warren can run. So when you talk about, is he worth the number 1 pick? Is he as good as Abdul Carter? Warren is the kind of guy as a tight end that you have to look at not just on his talent and just on his grade and his numbers at the combine. You have to look at how he will apply that information to defenses. Who's going to cover him? How can the offense use him? And how much of a matchup advantage he will be. He will be such a matchup advantage that I think when we look back at this draft in 5 years, we may think that Tyler Warren should have gone in the top 3 or 4 picks. I don't think he will just because of his position, but he will be that kind of a crazy matchup nightmare for defenses and a dream for quarterbacks because even when he's covered, which isn't that often, but even when he's covered, he's not covered because he's 6'6". He can go way up in the air and catch the ball, especially in the end zone. I love this guy. I just, from a position standpoint, if a general manager takes him too high and then he just turns out to be pretty good, that's where he'll get criticized and fired. So a lot of it has to do with what GMs are really drafting for. Their second priority in drafting is to draft the best player for the team. The first priority is to draft for not getting himself fired.
Trevor, to that line, I looked at this list and I saw Jalen Walker out of Georgia as the 5th highest ranked player and one of the 12 with a first round grade, according to Matt Miller. And his comp was Harold Landry, and that scared me. Not that I don't think Harold Landry's been a good player for the Titans, because he has been. But I don't think of, man, I stunk so bad and got the number 1 pick so I can use it on the next Harold Landry. At that point, it's like every player below Jalen Walker, I'm not interested in if I can take Abdul Carter. Is that a narrow way of thinking?
Yeah, and I don't know that Harold Landry, I don't know that I would make that comp, because Landry, the way he wins is a little different from the way Jalen Walker wins. Jalen Walker is 6'2", 245, and he wins, first of all, with an incredibly fast first step. I mean, he is incredible coming off the snap, and that breaks down the footwork of the tackle that he is rushing against. The tackle now, instead of staying square to the line for longer, he has to turn and run and try to push him past the quarterback. Well, when he gets into that position, the thing that Walker does is he excels at bending and getting really, really low. So you got this tackle who's 6'6", who now has to reach way down to waist level or below to get a punch on him, and there's just not a whole lot of body there. So he's got about the same size as Harold Landry. Landry might be a little bigger right now, but I think that Walker is a bit more explosive. Now at 6'2", 245, the question is, will he be a pass rush specialist and not much of anything else? He can play off-ball linebacker, and he would need to, but in order to justify a high pick, they would need to rush the passer a lot. Well, when you've got this guy coming off the edge, if you've got a choice between run and pass, the first thing you want to do is run right at him. See if he's got the size and the strength to be able to handle getting pounded on. So if it's 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, and he's playing over the right tackle, and he's going to put his ears back and get after the passer, and the right tackle just smashes him in the face, and he's got to hold the point of attack, that's the risk that you take. If you take him too high, how are you going to use it?
Trevor Matich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Cam Ward had some fascinating comments last night. We'll get Trevor's thoughts on those as well. We continue. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Trevor Matich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. So Cam Ward has a message for teams who pass on him, according to the Associated Press. He was asked about taking himself out at halftime of the Pop-Tarts Bowl and said, okay, you're either going to draft me or you're not. If you don't draft me, that's your fault. You've got to remember you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I will remember that. It kind of reminds me of Tom Brady telling Robert Kraft after being taken in the 6th round that I'm the best decision you've ever made. Or Peyton Manning telling Bill Polian on his top 30 visit, if you don't take me, I'll kick your ass. That being said, Josh Rosen was drafted with the 10th overall pick and said there were 9 mistakes ahead of him. And I don't even know where Josh Rosen is now. Trevor Matich is with us. Trevor, let's start there. Is Cam Ward good enough to make the Titans regret passing on him? And what do you make of those comments? Do you see confidence? Do you see arrogance? What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I don't mind him leaving the bowl game at halftime. That's a separate thing. He gets a lot of criticism for that. I'm not one of the people that criticize him for that. I don't have a problem with that. As far as him saying that, though, publicly, it bothers me a lot. I mean, a lot, especially from a guy who went outside the system to do his own thing so much when he didn't need to at Miami. And that actually got him in trouble a lot in the first half. And then he came back in the second half of a bunch of games and down 2 scores, mounted furious comebacks in the second half to win games. So, part of it, though, was him just running around playing hero ball in the first half. And now for him to say that the teams that don't draft me, I'm going to be playing against you and I will remember you. If I'm an NFL team, I'm thinking, okay, last thing I want is for my quarterback to play and prepare like he's going to prove something to somebody else. I need him to prepare and play like he's going to be the best he can be for the game plan we're going to give him in this particular game. And that's what he's focused on. Not focused on, I'm going to show you and I'm going to show you, because then you start going outside the system. Then instead of checking down and throwing a short pass so it's 2nd and 6, you stand back in the pocket and scramble around because you're going to show them you're going to throw the ball deep down the field, and then bad things start to happen. And so that attitude, if you're going to have it, that's fine. But the way to achieve it is to pretend like you don't know anybody exists except the defense that you're facing, and you focus not on showing them, but on showing your coach that you're going to execute his game plan exactly like he wants you to execute it. And so it bothers me that he did that the way he did it in public. When Peyton Manning would say that to Bill Polian with the Colts, it's like, okay, well, you say that to him, you say that to him. You're going to go out there and announce it to the world? Why don't you put it on a rap diss track then? Why not? It bothers me that he said that, given what he did in Miami this year.
To that point, Trevor, I mean, again, you don't seem very keen on Cam Ward. And, again, you don't think that he should have a first-round grade. And I can't imagine you taking somebody with the first pick who doesn't have a first-round grade. But how important would the meetings be? Where you sit down with him and you watch the film and you get to learn about him as a leader, or you get to learn about him as a student and see his attitude and work ethic, the combine, the pro day visits, the private workout, time you spend with him, top 30-day visit. How important would that be as far as your opinion on Cam Ward?
Yeah, massive. It's massive. And what you said about attitude and work ethic are the first 2 things that I want to know about the guy. Because in order to succeed at quarterback in the NFL, really any position, you need to have a professional arrogance about you. In other words, you need to think that you're going to go out there and you're going to win because you are awesome, right? But you need to have a personal humbleness about you so that you will submit to coaching, so that you will not just do things your way all the time because you're arrogant personally, in addition to having that professional swagger. And in the meetings, I would want to learn that from the guy. When I say something, when I offer a criticism, is he going to consider the criticism, or is he just going to scoff and say, yeah, well, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, even though he's an NFL coach or an NFL scout? Because I know what I'm talking about, because look at me, I'm going to be a high draft choice. That's one of the things, that attitude, the combination of professional cockiness and swagger and personal humbleness, to accept and submit to coaching. And then the other thing is work ethic, because nobody in college is really fully aware of everything he needs to know about defenses in the NFL. I mean, most of the time, a quarterback in college is asked to read one or two guys on the other side of the ball. You know, pre-snap, they'll see, is there one safety deep or are there two? Is it blitz or is it not? And then on an RPOs, you're just looking at one guy. If he goes over there, I throw it here. If he goes here, I hand it there. And it's very simple. And what NFL coaches will do in those meetings is get you up on the whiteboard and start asking you questions. And they'll give you some pretty exotic coverages or blitzes, and they'll say, okay, in this situation, what do you do? Right? And you need to know as a quarterback what you will do, not based on what the options on offense are, but what the defense dictates and where the soft spot of that defense is. And every quarterback should be studying full time, heading up to those meetings and those individual, the combine and all the rest, full time, what those defenses are, how you apply different offensive schemes and systems and pass patterns and things like that to those, in how you react to different pressures. Because one of the things that makes good quarterbacks in the NFL is that they don't just know what to do when things are going well, but they know what their answers are when things don't go well. They don't just stand back there and look around and try to find something to do. They immediately know when something breaks down in a certain way, my answer is there. That's one of the things that made Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback of the Washington Commanders, so good this year. He knew where his answers were, and when things broke down, which they did a lot because they didn't have a great offensive line, he would hit those answers. And so in those meetings, to your question, Jared, the attitude and work ethic as defined by, did you study to be ready for this meeting, knowing what I'm going to ask you? Because in college, you probably didn't learn it because you didn't need to learn it to execute your college offense.
Trevor Matich with us. Trevor, if you knew that you had Abdul Carter in your pocket as the default number one pick, if I pick at one, it's going to be Carter. So you got to get me off of Abdul Carter. We talked about the Giants, and you said that 2 third-round picks would not be enough to get you to 3 to give up on Carter. What would you have to get, generically speaking, in order to move off of Abdul Carter? Would it be future first-round picks? Would it be extra second-round picks? You have Abdul Carter at 1-1. In order to move, what would it take to get you to move off Abdul Carter?
I don't mind future first-round picks and even future second-round picks, because this is a team, the Titans, that needs a whole lot of players. They're not going to restock their team and make a Super Bowl run in 2025. It's not going to happen. And so I wouldn't mind having the patience, but that's what it would take. Because again, when you talk about picks, you're talking about players. And this is a team that doesn't just need guys. Okay, so at linebacker, I got a guy. He's okay. He's an average NFL player. No, this is a team that is largely bereft of game-changing playmakers. And it's difficult to find those guys farther down in the draft. Now, you do find those guys farther down in the draft, but you're more likely to find them higher in the draft. And also, when you've got higher picks, you can package them to move up into the first round and grab somebody else that you like. So in terms of specific picks that I would take, I don't know what I would say there, because I'd have to look at it more in detail. But from a standpoint of what I would give up, if you're giving up Carter, you're giving up one of the best risks. And I always talk about first round picks, really any pick, as a risk that he will pan out the way you hope he will. Some will, some won't. But in terms of a risk to pan out as if not generational, then certainly one of the best pass rushers of his career compared to everybody else in the league, in order to give that up, I can't have 2 or 3 or 4 guys that are pretty good. Because you don't get to the Super Bowl and win it with a bunch of guys who are pretty good. You need those superstar playmakers mixed in with those guys that are pretty good. And Carter is one of those guys.
Trevor Matich, as always, great stuff. Is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trev, appreciate your time as always. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Matich on our program. And again, saying, hey, you're going to have to give me a haul to move off of Abdul Carter. So in order to move off of Abdul Carter, what would it take? Coming up next, When it comes to Cam Ward, I'm having a hard time getting there. But there is a way you could get me there. We'll do that next. Stillman Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Trevor, not happy with Cam Ward's comments yesterday, again, being asked about why he took himself out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl at halftime. He said, "You're either going to draft me or not. If you don't draft me, that's your fault. You've got to remember you are the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that." I was a little surprised at how much those comments rankled the feathers of Trevor Matich. Rankled feathers? Ruffled feathers? Whatever. I was surprised at how much that ruffled Trev's feathers. But I can be talked in to Cam Ward. I'm not sure I can be talked into Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick, but if I am going to draft Cam Ward, I probably do have to use the number 1 overall pick. I was watching some old Rick Spielman podcast because now Rick Spielman is a senior advisor with the New York Jets, which means, Ian, he has left the podcast, which means if you are a fan of this program and hate how much I reference what Rick Spielman said, congratulations to you. You never have to hear that again anymore because he's done doing podcasts, which sucks for people like me and the people out there that want to be educated by real football people, because Spielman, I think, is pretty good. But I was watching an old Spielman podcast the other day in which early in this process, in the college football season, when Cam Ward started to make his ascent, he was asked who he thinks Cam Ward comps to. And he said Tyrod Taylor and a little bit of Malik Willis. And I heard that and I was like, woo! And we're talking about passing on Abdul Carter for that. When I listen to Trevor talk, it doesn't even sound like it is a legitimate thought that he would pass on Abdul Carter for Cam Ward. But here is the real discussion that needs to be happening over at Titans HQ. Because I do see the messages you guys send in when it comes to Ward and Sanders, and it's not Ward and Sanders are so good, Jared, we can't not take those guys. It's we don't have a quarterback. So here's the question. And again, this is what I wonder when it comes to using my draft assets, spending money, etc. Cam Ward or Sam Darnold? Now, many of you are going to side with Cam Ward. You're going to hear me say that, and you're going to say, "Oh, God, Jared, we know you love Sam Darnold. Give it a break." Well, first of all, Tim Hasselbeck said this today on the Midday Show, that Sam Darnold is the best available quarterback as far as the free agent market is concerned. Sam Darnold is 28 years old, or I guess he will be 28 years old, no injury history. Again, everybody else, Rodgers, old. Russell, old. Cousins, old. In fact, at that point, why don't you just call Tannehill up and offer him $20 million? Derek Carr, old and injured. Sam Darnold is not. So that's the best, in theory, available quarterback, Sam Darnold. Cam Ward seems like the best available draft quarterback. Cam Ward or Sam Darnold. And while, again, if you listen to this show, you know that I would lean towards Darnold. Here's how I could be talked off of Darnold and into Ward. His personality. In order to play quarterback in the NFL, you physically have to possess tools to be able to do it. And I have seen enough of Cam Ward to think that Cam Ward does physically possess the tools to be able to play in the NFL. Guess what? So does Will Levis. So does Mac Jones. All of those guys physically can play quarterback in the NFL. But then there's the other stuff. How hard do you work? How coachable are you? How much do you love the game? How determined are you not to fail? What kind of teammate are you? What kind of a leader are you? And most importantly, and this is not, again, nobody that was trying to be politically correct would ask this, but I'm trying to build a football team. How smart are you? And not book smart, but how football smart are you? Again, I have no idea what Jaden Daniels' GPA is, because everybody always tells me about how smart Will Levis was. He went to business school, Jared. Well, Will Levis, I mean, he is so stupid on the field. I have no idea what Jaden Daniels' GPA was. I know he's a smart football player. And if Cam Ward checks all those boxes, if he's a hard worker, if he's coachable, if he's obsessed with the game, if he's a great teammate, if he's a great leader, if he's one of those first guy in, last guys out, then I could consider it. And I actually heard Chase and Big Joe today having a discussion in which Big Joe said all these personality tests, he don't care about that. He only cares about what the tape says. But I'm going to tell you right now, the tape says Anthony Richardson is better than Cam Ward. His tape was electric. Put the Vandy game on with Anthony Richardson. Put the UT game on with Anthony Richardson. Put the Utah game on with Anthony Richardson. But there was nothing from the tape that would say Anthony Richardson is going to tap out of a game and check himself out. But right now, I can't take Cam Ward off the film with the first pick, because I'm not convinced that if I take Cam Ward and pass on Abdul Carter, who I know has the potential to be a special player, if I take Cam Ward, I don't know that I can go to war with Mahomes or CJ Stroud or those kind of quarterbacks just from the tape. I mean, when I watch the tape, I don't even know if Cam Ward can see the blitz coming when there are 7 guys breathing on the offensive line at the line of scrimmage. But his personality, his leadership, his smarts, that could sell me. But in order to sell me on using the first pick, which again, to me is a choice of, okay, I am now passing on Abdul Carter. And Trevor just said he would not take the 3rd overall pick and 2/3, a third this year and a third next year. He would not take that to move off of Abdul Carter. No matter what else you think about Hunter or Warren or Mason Graham, or he's like, I don't think enough of those guys to move off of Abdul Carter. So in order to take Cam Ward has to clear the hurdle of he will be better than Sam Darnold. Again, Sam Darnold threw for 4,300 yards last year. The Tennessee Titans have never had a quarterback as the Titans throw for 4,000 yards in a season. Sam Darnold made the Pro Bowl on the first ballot this past year. Is that what Cam Ward's going to be? That's the decision that has to be made. And right now, I'm not there. And there's nothing from the tape that is going to put me over what I've seen Sam Darnold do in the NFL. The only way Cam Ward could win me over is via the meetings, via his personality, via the kind of worker he is. And unfortunately, I don't think Cam is going to come for a top 30 visit at the house of Jared Stillman. But that's the only way I can be talked out of taking Abdul Carter with the 1st overall pick. That or an incredible trade. That's it. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in. That's 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that. Plus, again, you may not like Sam Darnold, but I have to ask, what's better? Is Ward better? Is Carr better? Are these guys better? We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
What can you tell us about Minnesota's plan for Darnold?
There's a sense in the Vikings building of not necessarily wanting to let a 27-year-old quarterback who just had the year Sam Darnold had walk out the building and get nothing in return. The question is, can they afford it? Can they franchise him? Can they sign him to a long-term deal? And what does that mean for the future of J.J. McCarthy, who a year ago was the 10th pick in the draft and ideally from the Vikings standpoint will be their long-term starter at the position? You look at J.J. McCarthy's cap numbers over the next 3 years, it's $5 million, $6 million, $7 million. You start talking about re-signing Sam Darnold or franchising him at numbers like that, you really have to adjust your plan for the rest of your roster build if you do that. Now, the Vikings are going over their options. It is entirely possible they make an effort to bring Sam Darnold back. It's entirely possible they franchise him, similarly to what I said about T. Higgins, in an effort to work out a long-term deal or maybe get something in return in trade. But these are complicated issues that the Vikings are working through here over the next couple of weeks, and right now it's hard to predict how it turns out.
That was Dan Graziano on ESPN. I'm not sure it's really all that complicated. You know, you see, he just said a bunch of words so that a casual person watching television is like, wow, it's really complicated when it comes to Darnold and the Vikings and what they're going to do. I don't think it's very complicated. If they tag him, the tag is $40 million, and then once he signs the tender, he's under contract for $40 million. I have no idea what the Vikings budget is. You know, the cap is fake, so I don't care about that. But again, the money is real. So if Darnold's due $40 million, that takes away from $40 million of cash that the Vikings are budgeted to spend this upcoming season. And maybe they don't like that. I don't know. Again, here's what I do know. I do know that when they drafted J.J. McCarthy with the 10th overall pick, their plan was not to pay Sam Darnold $40 million this upcoming season. That is all I know. Now, I did talk to Matt Caller, who covers the Vikings, and I said, Darnold, tag yes or no? What's going to happen? He said he thinks they're going to tag him. Graziano has, I think, alluded to the idea of Darnold being tagged. Tim Hasselbeck today on the midday show, he said the Bengals are trying to tag and trade T. Higgins. The tag window is open from today until March 4th, which means that starting today, the Minnesota Vikings, the Cincinnati Bengals, anybody can tag and then go from there. My guess would be that the combine is in, I believe, a week and a half, 2 weeks.
I think it's, next Thursday, something like that.
Next Thursday?
Yep.
Oh, my God. February's almost over.
28
We're
days.
a week away.
Yep.
We are a week away. Wow. God, life comes at you fast. We are a week away from the combine. My guess is if Minnesota is going to tag Sam Darnold, they will do it before the combine or they will do it at the combine. My guess is they are going to shop Sam Darnold at the combine. They are going to see what they can get. And I have no idea what their asking price is. And I mean like what their, not just asking price, but what their accepting price is. But with me, again, I got to circle the 35th pick as what I think is the kind of target choice. Like they would look at me and say, okay, I can get the 35th pick. I'm not getting the first pick out of the Titans. I can get the 35th pick, though. And then they're going to have to talk to Darnold's agents, but Darnold's agents aren't rookies. They know what they're doing. So that's not going to be that complicated. But I think they're going to go there, and they're going to see what they can get for him. Here's what I don't know. What I don't know is how much does Minnesota really view Darnold as their quarterback of the future. If they view him as the quarterback of the future and not JJ, then they'll find a way to sign Sam Darnold. They'll tag him, and then they'll sign him. If they see it as, well, let's pay Darnold $40 million and he can be the quarterback this year and we're fine with that, then they're going to want a very high price in exchange of moving him. Because, again, that's their quarterback at that point. But if they're just looking to shop him, that could be a totally different thing. It would not surprise me if they go to the combine and there are not takers. There is not a big discussion there that they then leave the combine and say, yeah, there's really not much in that market. We're not going to tag them because we're not going to work out a trade. But I think this is to be determined. The one thing I will say again is, what are your other options? For some reason, people out there think paying Derek Carr $40 million and trading to acquire him is better than acquiring Sam Darnold, who is like 7 years younger. I don't get it. Again, every coach Derek Carr has ever had has been fired, including his coach last year, Dennis Allen, who was fired twice with Derek Carr as the quarterback. Sam Darnold's coach just won Coach of the Year. Why is Carr a better option? And also, I keep hearing about this talk that Carr's going to get released. Carr's not getting released. They might trade him. They're not releasing him. So I don't know why that's an option. Darnold's not a better, or these old men are not better options. Rodgers, Cousins, Russell, not better options right now than Sam Darnold. So again, to me, it's, do you draft Ward with the first pick or do you sign Darnold? I think Darnold's a better player. I think Darnold's going to be the better player. So I'd rather go in that direction. But again, the question is, what does Minnesota want to do on all of that as well? 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. And our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, Jared, could Cam Ward's workout sway you into drafting him? I remember seeing C.J. Stroud work out and thinking that the ball comes out of his hands differently. Curious as to your take. No. At this point, the tape is the tape with Cam Ward. As far as the play is concerned, I don't have any questions about Cam Ward's ability in the NFL. I know that Cam Ward can make every throw that you would ask him to make on the field. I know he can do it. Again, Will Levis can make every throw. But I also wonder with Levis, like, can he check it down? Can he layer the ball? Like when it's time for the fastball, I know he can throw the fastball. When it's time for the changeup, can he throw it? I know Cam Ward can do that. I know Cam Ward can push the ball to the opposite hash. I know Cam can throw on the run. I know Cam can throw off platform. I know Cam can check it down. I know he can make all those throws. That's what the workout tells you. Now, look, if Cam Ward runs a 4.2, then maybe that changes my mind a little bit. But for the most part, if Cam's workout is not just out of this world, oh my God, then no, it doesn't change much. Because again, with Cam, I know he's got talent. My question is, can you read the blitz? And you can't determine that from a workout. It's not like they're coming to sack him. So no, I can't see the workout kind of changing my philosophy as to whether or not you draft him. One texter says, I'm not hating on wanting Sam Darnold, but how much do we need to consider the advantages that Sam Darnold had in having Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, and the Titans have no one who compares to any of them?
And a coach.
So here's what I'll say about that. They had those guys last year when they were running out Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins and Scarbini quarterbacks. They didn't win. They had Kevin O'Connell last year. They didn't win. They had those guys with Kirk Cousins, and they were, a playoff-ish team with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback with those guys. With Sam Darnold, they were better, but roughly the same-ish. Well, Kirk just got $45 million a year going away from that, coming off of an Achilles tear in his 30s. This guy is 28. So when you say, how much do we consider O'Connell and Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson, that's how you win 14 games. I don't think anybody has said, especially me, I don't think anybody has argued that you're going to win 14 games by trading the 35th pick for Sam Darnold. I have not made that claim. I think you could make the playoffs next year with Sam Darnold as the quarterback. That means I think you might be able to win 10 games. I'm not going any step further than that. And that is might. He won 14 last year because of all those guys. I love, though, how it's like, oh, we're not allowed to talk about Darnold with these guys because he's got Jefferson and Addison and but we're never allowed to criticize Tua. And Tua's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and an offensive coach and great running backs, and we're never allowed to criticize Tua. I don't get it. Do not get it. 615-737-1025, what Tim Hasselbeck thinks should happen in all of this. I was pretty blown away this morning that somebody got on ESPN and said it. As a matter of factly, as Tim Hasselbeck did. We'll get to that next, and your phones. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game.
I think I see it differently. Look, you know that Sam Darnold can play, and I think that's the difference. And so everything Sam said is right about, the benefits of a rookie contract. But when you look at what Sam Darnold did this season, you can win with that. Like, that works. No matter what anybody says, no matter what they think of J.J. McCarthy, you don't know until a guy does it. Everyone thought Trevor Lawrence could play. He hasn't done it yet. And so I think the fact that you have a 27-year-old quarterback, this isn't a 32-year-old quarterback, a 27-year-old quarterback in your building who also, by the way, kind of probably has the perspective of, I've been other places and, I didn't necessarily play that same way at those other stops. In this offense, with this coaching staff, with these players, I can have success. Look, you're going to pay them starter money, no question about it. You're not resetting the quarterback market because of it. So really, you're not allocating any more money to the quarterback position than any other team. So I actually think you build around Sam Darnold. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of J.J. McCarthy. I definitely would answer the phone on him, but it wouldn't mean I would move on from him, and I would build around Sam Darnold, who proved he can play, for the Minnesota Vikings.
That was Tim Hasselbeck today on ESPN, and I heard that, and I was like, you go, girlfriend. You let him know, Tim Hasselbeck, a 28-year-old quarterback who proved he can play in the NFL. Like, what are we doing? And yet all I do is I get texters, callers, he sucks. Now, here's what I'll say. It does not make sense if Minnesota's decided Darnold's the guy. See, Minnesota is at the Saros-Askarov point with Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, and it's because of the contracts, which is exactly what happened with Saros and Askarov, right? The Predators had to make a choice on UC Saros' contract. They chose UC Saros, and it looks like before the contract has even started that they chose incorrectly. But, again, the point here is you got to choose. If you sign Darnold to an extension, then you have to trade J.J. Because if not, you have the 10th overall pick in last year's draft sitting on the grocery store shelf like a rotting vegetable. That's not a good idea. So that's the one thing. They do have to make a choice between McCarthy or Darnold. Personally, I would choose Darnold. But the plan last year was obvious. It was McCarthy. They took McCarthy with the idea that if he was ready, he was going to play. If he wasn't, they were going to go with Darnold. McCarthy got hurt. They went with Darnold, and he played well. But thank you, Tim Hasselbeck, for saying, look, this guy actually proved that he can play. Everybody looks at Trevor Lawrence, and they say, Trevor Lawrence, but he hasn't proven that he can actually play. He ain't won anything. Except for that division title, thanks to Amy Adams-Strunk going off of her rocker in the middle of that 2022 season. Darnold proved he can play. And a lot of you people don't want to admit that. One texter says the way you keep covering this Darnold stuff is making it look like the Titans will win the Super Bowl with him. Yeah, you want the best quarterback possible, but you can't win the Super Bowl with him, so who cares? I don't know. Do you think it mattered to the Chiefs if they had Alex Smith? Come win the Super Bowl with him, but I think that Alex Smith helped them go from the worst team in the league to the playoffs and a playoff contending team that then was able to pass it on to Mahomes. Yes, I think that matters. Let's go to Sean, who's up next here on our program, has been waiting very patiently. Sean, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yeah, so two thoughts on this whole thing, and I've actually agreed with you on this part of it. So I don't think the Titans are ready to bring in an Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold or, if you have an older quarterback, bringing someone in like that, all it's going to do is make you draft in a lower position and you're not rebuilding, you're not winning anything. So I think the key thing that Hasselbeck said is that Darnold proved that he can win in Minnesota. He's been other places and hasn't played well. I don't think he'll get more than maybe a third, but probably more like a fourth. And I think that would be worth it for Minnesota to just keep him for 1 year, tag him. And if he plays well, he plays well. If not, then you get McCarthy after him. But it's, just let him develop, let McCarthy develop more. That's my thought.
So, again, I don't know what their budget is, and I do appreciate your call, Sean, though I disagree with almost all of it. I don't know what their budget is, right? So the Vikings they're not considered elite spenders, like the Eagles or the 49ers, but they're also not considered cheap spenders like the Cowboys, the Patriots, or the Bengals. They are considered, I think, relatively decent spenders, but also, again, not the Eagles. So if you're Kevin O'Connell and the general manager there, Adolfo Mensa, and you are having a conversation with the owner and you're talking about tagging Sam Darnold and playing him at quarterback next year, you're now taking $40 million in cash out of your budget, which you were planning on spending because you didn't draft J.J. McCarthy with the 10th overall pick to sit his ass on the bench. Now, I don't know what their needs are and what they would need to spend in free agency and anything else, but $40 million is a big chunk. So that is the one part where I'd say, okay, you got to be careful with that. If their whole plan was JJ, if they love JJ, if they're ready to move on to JJ, then that's why you move off of Darnold. You know, it reminds me of Brett Favre. If you remember Brett at the end in Green Bay, what he would do is at the end of the season, he'd be like Travis Kelce is now with the, I don't know, I'm not sure. And for a while, Green Bay was like, well, you let us know, Brett, and if you come back, you're our quarterback. And after about the third year of Brett doing that, Brett was like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And they're like, okay, Brett, time to move on because we're moving on to Aaron. But they probably had to love Aaron in order to be able to do that. Everybody says Minnesota loves JJ, but I don't know that. And so this idea, oh yeah, just give JJ more time on the bench. Maybe JJ needs to play. Maybe that's the way they view it. So here's my problem with this idea of if you get Darnold and you win games, but you don't win the Super Bowl, you didn't get anything out of it. So what's the point? And my problem with that is I don't think it's as simple as either win the Super Bowl or pick first. I think in the case of the Bengals, there is something to that because that's the only way they were ever going to get good with that cheap-ass owner who has already cost himself millions and millions by this whole T. Higgins thing for the last 2 years. I think they tagged T. Higgins hoping to trade him last year, couldn't find a partner because everybody that they called to say, hey, we'll take a second-round pick for Higgins. Everybody said, well, we'll just draft the next T. Higgins. And so now they've tagged him again, and they say they're going to try to work out a long-term deal, but I don't think they are, and the price just keeps going up. Like every day that they don't sign Jamar Chase, the price gets more for Jamar Chase. So I think they tried to cheap out, and they acted stupid, and now I feel like they're kind of backed into a corner. But again, I don't think it's as simple as everybody makes it out to be. Everybody just says, oh, well, it doesn't do us any good to not be picking number one every year if we end up winning games. First of all, every single person making these decisions gets fired if you don't win. So, like, you may look at it and say, well, who cares if we make the playoffs this year? But Brian Callahan very much cares about showing improvement as far as the win and loss total is concerned, because if he doesn't, he's fired. And as we've learned with GMs, you know, you really only get one shot at this. And with Amy, nothing lasts forever for Brinker and Borgonzi. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe that by putting in a stable option at quarterback, which I consider Sam Darnold to be, Sam Darnold over the last 2 years has won 18 games. He is 18-6. As a starting quarterback, including one game in one of those week 17, we're throwing it away, who cares, whatever. You know, a week 17 game that he played for the 49ers 2 years ago. So he is 18-6 as a starter. That is stabilizing the quarterback position. I think it's, hey, you stabilize that, you draft a pass rusher out of Penn State, you draft some other guys. Perhaps you sign some good players this year instead of just signing guys you know from the past or guys with bad knees, etc. You sign these guys and you go forward with the stability as far as quarterbacks concerned. You're looking at it as, oh yeah, let's be a mess at quarterback so we can be bad every year, and then hopefully the year that the quarterbacks are good, we'll take them. And that's great, but the people who are working those jobs are going to get fired before that happens. One Dash says, why would the Vikings move on from Darnold? No way last year's rookie is ready. If 14 wins wasn't good enough for Minnesota, why not keep Sam and run it back? Keep the young guy on the shelf for a couple more seasons. So I do think there's probably a discussion of that, which is, hey, JJ, again, this is what we don't know, is what they really think of JJ. I know what they're telling people because Albert Breer came on this show at the Super Bowl, and Bert said that the Vikings love JJ. that he's ahead in his rehab, and they love him. Now, I know that they obviously liked him last year because they used the 10th overall pick on him. But we don't know, like, do they really, really love him? Kansas City loved Mahomes so much that they shipped off Alex Smith. Not that Jason Whitlock is the end-all, be-all as far as decision-making is concerned, but Jason Whitlock was asked that day on TV, are they making a mistake moving on from Alex Smith? And he said yes, but it's because they love Mahomes. I don't know what Minnesota thinks of JJ, but if they think JJ's the guy and they think JJ's ready, then they're going to want JJ to play. It wasn't like Green Bay didn't think Favre could play anymore. They did, but they were ready to move on to Aaron. If they're ready to move on to JJ, then you move off Sam Darnold and you save your $40 million and you try to get something in exchange for it. If you think JJ's secretly a bust, you got him in there, you're like, oh, God, he stinks. And I don't think that's the case. But if that's, then you sign Darnold to an extension and you start saying, hey, we'll trade JJ. But we don't know how they feel about that. One texter says, what good productive quarterback doesn't have the talent around them? The argument alone tells me they don't know football. Logical thinking is not common anywhere. Good take on Sam Darnold, Jared. I mean, here's what I love about the Darnold stuff. I think they're going to trade for Darnold. Like, I think that, again, Borgonzi's in charge. Brinker knows they have to do something at quarterback. I think they all know that the two quarterbacks in this class aren't that good. Callahan is not involved in the decision-making, but I actually think Callahan probably would prefer the 28-year-old quarterback anyway. I think they're going to trade for Sam Darnold. I think they're going to sign him to a contract extension. He's going to be the quarterback. I think it's the right call. And I bet you there are all these people like the distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat that hate Sam Darnold. They're going to do a 180. But this is what, I mean, again, that's what I think's going to happen. And right now, for some reason, if I don't say that they should go get Mahomes, then you guys tell me that, oh, I don't have a clue. One texter says, God, you sure do love the Bengals, don't you? That cheap-ass team has set the Titans back years. Ian, do I love the Bengals? And what is that in, like, what?
Well,
how did they set the Titans back?
You do love Joe Burrow.
I love the fact that Joe Burrow basically told the cheap owner to stick it up his tush yesterday, or whenever it was last week, by going in the Barstool podcast and basically saying that the cap is fake.
Yeah, Callahan coming from Cincy. That didn't work out well, did it? At least not
As
yet.
of right now.
No. You ask Solomon Wilcots if Cincy sold us a lemon.
Oh, yeah. And then he said it was Tennessee's fault, not Brian Callahan's fault.
He said, oh, I think you might have sold him a lemon with this Levis guy.
He's the one that loved him. He's the one that took his pants off after the draft for Will Levis. And it was like I think the quote in the article with the Albert Breer piece was something like, I told Rand, yeah, do our due diligence on these quarterbacks in the draft, but I don't think any of these guys are better than Will. It's like, so you would have passed on Jaden Daniels as opposed to Will Levis? One text says, Minnesota doesn't fully know what they have yet in JJ. He was injured for the season. Keep Darnold at least for now and cross that bridge when you come to it. I think they have a pretty good idea what they have. Again, that would be like saying Kansas City didn't know what they had in Mahomes when they moved off of Alex Smith. They knew.
I wonder if
didn't.
I wonder if McCarthy.
They did.
Wonder if McCarthy would have played more if he didn't get hurt. You know, probably not, given how well they were doing. Hey.
So I remember a couple years ago, Robbie Stanley was talking about benching Tannehill and playing Levis, and the point being that you've got to see what you have in Levis. And I'm like, you're totally off base on that. They see it every day in practice. They see it in training camp. They see it in preseason games. Then they get to see it in practice. And I mean, the practice that nobody else can watch. They know what they have. Granted, McCarthy was hurt. They know what they have. You want to see what they have in Levis. Like when you say Minnesota doesn't know what they have in JJ, you're saying I don't know what they have in JJ. That's what that is. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
I got a question for the NBA players. What the hell are you playing for? What are you playing for? It's not about the money. You make all the money. What, you're injured? Well, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. Are you hurt or are you injured? There's a difference. In hockey, we play hurt. We play injured. That is the culture of the sport. It's always been that way. So you want to talk about the business, the CBA, fans get all of that. But what do fans resonate with? They resonate with what's real. You got to fight sometimes for your country. You got to compete. You got to go out there and leave it on the ice because those people are paying the price of admission. So fans know whether our stars are on the ice or not, they're getting their money's worth. The NBA has that issue that they got to work on. You got to create a better culture for your players. It starts with the leaders. This issue, there was no issue when Jordan was around. There was no issue when Kobe was around. There's no issue when Sidney Crosby's around. There's no issue when Wayne Gretzky was around because those are true leaders. They lead by example. Sidney Crosby, Hockey Canada, those players, both Canada and U.S., it was the players that did that for the four nations. That's not the league. The league set it up, but the players went out there and decided and said, you know what, boys? We're all in. When is the NBA going to do that? Because, I haven't sat down and watched the NBA consistently since Kobe. Since Kobe has died, I have not sat down and watched the NBA consistently. I love basketball. Love the players. I think LeBron's great. I think KD's great. Steph Curry, love watching them. But you got to be on the court. You got to be there, and when you're there, you got to go all in. The fans got to feel that they're getting their money's worth. And right now, there's a big difference between what the NHL's doing with those events and what the NBA's doing.
PK Subban, I salute you. That was PK this morning on ESPN. So there is talk that there may be a change to the all-star structure for the NBA. All they're trying to do is they're always changing everything. And I've said this. The NBA keeps coming up with in-season tournament gimmicks. They keep coming up with all-star game gimmicks. We're going to have Team Candace Parker against Team Muggsy Bogues against Teams Bugs Bunny coming up next year. And now there's talk about USA versus the world. Again, none of it matters until the NBA players can admit to themselves that the problem is they don't care enough. And the media that covers them, the people on ESPN, everybody else can say, your problem is you don't care enough. You don't care about regular season games. You don't care about postseason games. Kawhi, Joel Embiid. You don't care about all-star games. If you don't care, it doesn't matter. And I was thinking back to when basketball was good. Do you remember that Golden State series when Golden State won all those games and they played Cleveland in the finals and it went to 7 games and LeBron dominated and man, that was good basketball. Why? Because they cared. LeBron cared about bringing a title back to Cleveland. Golden State cared about going down as the greatest team ever. I mean, that was passion. That was war. That was hard-fought basketball. And then Kevin Durant said, screw it, let's just win every game. And it kind of took away the fun of basketball. Do you remember when the American basketball players stopped caring about the Olympics? We got embarrassed. And they said, never again. Kobe, LeBron, Carmelo, they all went to Beijing for the Redeem Team. USA versus the world, it might be legit if you get the players to care. And the only way the players care is if they're afraid of being embarrassed. They all have $1 gazillion. They can all date whichever Kardashian they want. They can all do whatever they want. But again, nobody is... There was an entire movie based off this premise that sports would get too commercialized and the players would stop caring. It was a comedy called Basketball. That's what's happened in the NBA. Soon enough, people will stop caring completely about the NBA, and it will go from basketball to basketball. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman and Company. Coming up next, the 2 o'clock replay. Cam Ward's got some comments. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company. What did you find the game?